the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, good morning. Starmer met Swift, the scandal that Prime Minister can't shake off.
It's now revealed that he had a 10-minute meeting with the global superstar when he attended her concert in London.
Now, this was following the approval of a VIP police escort for her, organised by his former Chief of Staff, Sue Gray.
Meanwhile, the Chancellor has told Cabinet Ministers that plans to fill the £22 billion black hole in the finances will be enough only to keep public services standing still.
It comes as she's accused of hypocrisy. After it has emerged, she criticised Rishi Sunak on national insurance rises in 2022, calling it the worst possible tax rise.
Assisted dying is set to return to Parliament as a new bill is formally introduced in the House of Commons.
Staggering new figures show 20% of Welsh children, that's 1 in 5, are illiterate by the time they reach secondary school.
And a new survey finds that the majority of parents believe fines for unauthorised absences would not deter them from taking their children out of school for a holiday. So we're asking this morning, should you be fined for taking your kids out of school?
And in the sport this morning, well, there's no Pep, no more Carsley. Thomas Tuchel will be unveiled as the New England manager this afternoon. Northern Ireland destroy Bulgaria, and there's huge controversy at the Conquer World Championships.
It's a warm Wednesday for all, a wet day for some though. Find out whether you'll be soggy or dry with a full forecast coming up later.
Good morning, it's a Wednesday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast.
We've got a situation now where the England football team is going to be managed by a German.
Who would have thought?
We wouldn't have thought it yesterday. We're talking about Pep Guardiola.
You know what? Nobody did. I think it took everybody surprised. We're all thinking it's going to be Pep Guardiola. I'm trying to keep calm about the situation, thinking this is great. We're going to have Pep. And then within a few hours, it starts leaking out that Thomas Tuchel is going to be the New England manager.
Yeah, but you said yesterday, you were saying this is great, we're going to have Pep. I think this guy's very, very talented.
I agree.
And as a Manchester United supporter, I'm thinking if we're going to replace Ten Hag, this is the guy to do it.
And what about the fact that he's not a Brit? You know, he's not English.
Well, we've seen it before. We've seen it with Sven-Göran Eriksson, of course, Swedish. We have Fabio Capello, who was Italian. Neither of those worked out the way we wanted, but really it's a matter of getting the best person for the job. Do you either go with an English manager and think, well, maybe it's not going to work?
The thing is, they just don't give English or British managers a chance in the Premier League. It is absolutely scandalous, and foreign ownership means that's the way it goes. I mean, our game is changing beyond belief. So many football stories. I mean, the Alex Ferguson situation there as well. But you've got people who just don't feel it, don't understand it, that this is their indigenous team. The feeling's not the same.
Yeah, I buy that as well. And I think in a perfect world, and the FA would say that as well, they would love to have an English manager. Yeah, it was interesting because I was looking at managers that have won the World Cup for different countries. It's never been a manager that's not been from that country that's won the World Cup. Everybody always seems to be from there. Would you get Germany appointing an English manager, I don't know. But you know what? I'm not even going to... I don't really have a huge problem with that. I just think as long as England actually managed to win something, I think that's the most important thing. And then we can start shouting about nationalities if it doesn't
I think
work.
if England could actually just play like the mighty Northern Ireland
Absolutely.
did last night, that's what you really want to see, hey?
That's the big story, isn't it?
That's the
5
big
goals against
story.
Bulgaria.
Yeah.
5-0? What's been going on
We'll
there?
have a bit of that.
We will.
OK, my
I think
friend,
we
so we'll
poach
talk
Michael
about all
O'Neill
of this as the day goes on.
Yep,
Thank
interesting
you
stuff,
very much.
absolutely.
See you in 20 minutes.
Now, it is the story that just keeps on going. The Taylor Swift freebie scandal has taken on a new lease of life after it's emerged that the Prime Minister did meet with Swift at her Wembley gig back in August after granting her a security escort.
Big deal. If he's going to go to all that trouble, why wouldn't he meet her? Of course he's going to meet her after that. The question is, should he have granted the security escort at all? And the meeting her isn't a problem to me at all. She could be saying, I met the Prime Minister. She might be boasting about that.
Yeah, he probably would have met her whether he'd granted her the blue lights or not. But the fact is, it's being reported right across the papers, even in the left-wing media. It's front of The Guardian this morning, which goes to show that this government just does not have a grip of their narrative at the moment.
Well, you could argue Sue Gray, and she's now history.
So this is another dig at her.
Yeah, this is, yeah.
Well, yes, this has emerged that they spoke for 10 minutes, and this was after he was given free tickets to one of her summer shows.
OK. Meanwhile, the Chancellor has told Cabinet Ministers that plans to fill this £22 billion black hole we talk about will only be enough to keep public services standing still.
Well, let's speak to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, about all of this. And Catherine, look, let's start, shall we, with this Swift meeting with the Prime Minister and Taylor Swift. OK, so we have the argument about the security and the escort. This is the sort of escort that Prince Harry is going all the way to the courts to try and get, and he can't get his hands on it. And then we hear now that they've had this meeting as a result. It doesn't look good, does it?
No, it really doesn't look good. And as you say, when this is on the front page, even of The Guardian, then I think that sends a really worrying signal to the government, because we know now that the Prime Minister went to see Taylor Swift not once but twice, and the second time had this 10-minute meeting with the star himself and his family, and that followed the police granting this VVIP police escort to her following interventions from her mother and following threats basically to cancel the concert. She, of course, had cancelled a concert in Austria because of security fears. Now, the police are supposed to be operationally independent. They originally didn't feel it was necessary, but it's become clear that figures very high in government got involved. The Attorney General, the Home Office were involved, Sue Gray was involved, and so the list goes on. So I think the optics of this for the government are not good at all at a time that it's trying to move on from the sort of scandals of freebie gate, dresses, money for spectacles, free tickets. The bad news just seems to keep on coming.
Meanwhile, Catherine, tell us a little bit about this plan from the Chancellor to try and raise 40 billion in the budget now, not just the 20 or 22 billion of the black hole.
Yes, just when we thought it was a £22 billion black hole they had to fill, we hear now that Rachel Reeves is looking to get 40 billion somehow or other. So this budget coming on October the 30th is going to be extremely difficult, I suspect, because the £22 billion will just keep us sort of where we are. And without raising considerably more money, there's going to be very, very real cuts to departments, austerity, if you like, something that Labour promised they would not bring in. And to be honest, it was clear well before the election that whoever was in charge was going to either have to make substantial cuts to public services or raise taxes by a large amount. But nobody wanted to talk about it apart from the Institute for Fiscal Studies, who kept flagging it. The Conservatives cut national insurance for employees twice, hoping to shift the dial, knowing that they probably wouldn't be around to pick up the pieces afterwards. Labour also knew that things were going to be bad, but didn't want to talk about it, promised change, promised no return to austerity, promised no tax rises for working people. But of course, working people are likely to be affected by increases to capital gains tax, cuts to the inheritance tax allowance, and indeed, as we're hearing, more and more likely those employer national insurance rises that we are expecting, which ultimately will, one way or another, affect working people too.
Yeah, pretty scary. The thing I don't understand, Catherine, is why this push, why this need to balance the books? If we've done 14 years under the Conservatives without balancing the books, why can't we just continue?
Well, I think Labour didn't want people to be scared of voting for them, wanted to make out that they would be responsible with the economy, wouldn't do anything along the lines of Liz Truss, didn't want to scare the horses. So they basically signed up to pretty much the Conservatives' rules on spending. In other words, that they weren't going to borrow for day-to-day spending, and that a debt would be falling by the end of this Parliament. Now, that gets them. It's pretty much boxed them in, to be honest. Now, it looks like they're going to borrow potentially up to 50 billion extra, but that's going to be earmarked separately because that's going to be for investment, big infrastructure projects, getting growth. But day-to-day spending on public services, which is so vitally needed, they've boxed themselves in, and now there looks like a whole load of really pretty unpalatable choices.
Catherine, now what I want to know from you watching and listening today is what you think of all of this. How would you balance the books? Do you think there's a need to balance the books, or why didn't they just continue? Why impose so much pain? I mean, we would have got through, you know, with the
Well, because
the books.
otherwise, as she said, it would be a real terms cut. And we've seen the state of our public services. Do we want them to continue to deteriorate, or do we want to see some investment? But the other big news in Westminster today is that Dame Esther Ranson's assisted dying bill is being brought before the Commons.
I made a promise to Esther Ranson before the election, provide time for a debate and a vote on assisted dying.
But the Prime Minister's promise to her means that today a bill will be introduced to Parliament which could legalise assisted dying for the terminally ill in England and Wales. Labour MP Kim Ledbetter private member's bill will be voted on by MPs at the end of November.
Current law is not fit for purpose, and this is not a law that would mean that everybody has to make that choice, but I think to give people that choice in some of the circumstances that we're hearing about today is really, really important.
Order, order.
MPs in Westminster last voted on this most contentious of issues in 2015.
The ayes to the right, 118. The noes to the left, 330.
Opinions are sharply divided. Former Conservative Minister Kit Malthouse supports the change.
A member of my extended family who died many years ago, actually, of multiple sclerosis in horrible circumstances, and more closely a death in my wife's family from breast cancer, both of which reinforced in me the idea that, you know, if anyone were to face those horrible circumstances, I'd at least like the choice.
But Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey is opposed.
But for me, having looked after my mother, who was terminally ill and died when I was next to her bedside when I was 15, and seen the pain she went through, one of the issues for me is improving palliative care, improving hospice care. It's just not good enough at the moment. And I think there's also the issue that affects me profoundly about elderly people, and a real worry that they will feel that if we go down this route, that they want to relieve a burden. They'll consider themselves a burden on their children and grandchildren.
And many worry about a slippery slope, such as has happened in Canada, where assisted dying for terminal conditions was legalised in 2016. then broadened to chronic conditions in 2021. Here's Alex Schadenberg, head of the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition.
It started with one military veteran who had PTSD contacting the support services for military veterans. And what happened is that they were told, have you considered medical aid in dying? Other cases popped up. So we learned that there was minimally about 10 of them. There might have been more, we don't know for sure, and there was at least 2 people who died by euthanasia who had PTSD. It's like the Heather Hancock situation. She's a woman who was born with disabilities, and now she's in the hospital having health problems, and the nurse says to her, do yourself a favor, ask for medical aid in dying. And she's like, but I'm not interested in medical aid in dying. And the nurse told her, well, you know, you're not living. You're just existing. You should never legalize euthanasia or assisted suicide. The problem is you simply can't control it.
MPs have a huge decision to make. Catherine Forster, GB News.
What a lot of old nonsense. I mean, all these people, I mean, politicians in particular, who will speak up in favour of, oh, we shouldn't legalise dying, we shouldn't do this. They just stand for nothing. They're just, rather than be controversial or rather than tell the truth, they will simply say, well, let's back out of this. Let's not commit ourselves to this. Until they would find themselves in that situation where they would want to legalise dying.
What a cynical position. I think lots of people who object to it do it on particular grounds, religious grounds. I'm just reading this morning in the Mail that Archbishop of Canterbury has written a really powerful piece talking about how he's been at the bedside of hundreds and hundreds of people in their last hours, and he worries it would put intense and, what was the word he used, intense and inescapable pressure on people to end their lives earlier. I think this is a huge decision that MPs are making.
Why does it put pressure on anybody?
God.
Well,
why do you think?
So I think I'd lie there and say, oh, I'm going to be such a pressure on my kids. No, I think about me and the pain caused to me, and I should have the right to decide that. Not you, not any politician, whatever. That should be my right to say, out of here, had enough of this.
Okay.
That's what I think. I just think it's one of these obvious things, and people, these politicians, I don't believe a word they say. It's all about, oh, of course, we don't want to do this. What do you want to do? Lie in pain? Have you ever seen somebody in real horrendous pain? And
but the argument is that there are incredibly powerful pain relievers these days, that nobody should be dying a painful death. That's down to a failure in palliative care. You can have incredible morphine. You should be able to have a painless death. Maybe that's where the debate should be. You know, I don't think it's black and white.
Oh, that should be improved. There's no doubt about that.
I mean, my brother's wife's father just died recently, and he was dying over the weekend, and there was no palliative care in their part of Yorkshire over the weekend. That is a scandal. He was in pain as he passed away, and the family had to watch that. But is that an argument for assisted dying?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes, it is. I hope I never have to come to your bedside and look at you in pain, Isabel.
No, there's no reason. That's a different argument. I don't accept that as an argument. I think that we have modern medicine. You shouldn't be letting anybody suffer in those sorts of ways. But it's, you know, it's a big moment. 6 weeks of debate and discussion before this free vote.
Well, it's your life. It's your life. You should be able to decide what to do with it. My view, let's have your views, have your say throughout the programme today. This is what you do. Yes, you get in touch with us via that, have your say, and we will reflect those throughout the morning. So just to say to the producer of the show today, really want to reflect people's views that are coming in on things like getting your kids out of school for holidays. I mean, the thing I'm thinking about that is, why is this even a debate? It's a debate because people nowadays are used to getting what they want when they want it. Never in a million years when I was a kid at school would my parents have felt obliged, because we didn't have foreign holidays, to be quite truthful, but any sort of holiday to take you out of school, that over your education. It just, there's no way. And a lot of people just don't see education as important. Lots of things to have views about. Thomas Tuchel is the England manager, Alex Ferguson in his ambassadorial role.
And Taylor.
I think Starmer should be allowed to meet Taylor Swift.
No one's saying he shouldn't, but is that why he gave her a blue light escort? That's the question. It happened to be on the same day that Downing Street intervened. The plot thickens. Anyway, it's 6:18. Let us know what you think on all of those topics. In the meantime, here are some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
A court has been told that Sarah Sharif has had to wear a hijab to hide her facial injuries. that she received in the lead up to her death. The 10-year-old was beaten with objects, burnt with an iron and bitten in the weeks before she died.
Her father is on trial, along with her stepmother and uncle. They're all denying murder and causing or allowing the death of a child.
Tributes are coming in for the former head of the British Army, General Sir Mike Jackson, who has died at the age of 80. He's been described as a tremendous, inspirational leader. General Sir Mike served as head of the army between 2003 and 2006. That was during the Iraq War. He also commanded troops in Kosovo in 1999.
A ship carrying the first group of migrants from Italy has arrived in Albania today, marking the official start of a controversial plan to process thousands of asylum seekers in the Balkan nation. An Italian naval vessel will transfer an initial group of 16 migrants as part of a deal, sending up to 36,000 asylum seekers to Albania each year.
Okay, what do you think? What do you think weather-wise?
I hope this is something uncontroversial today. It's just going to be an okay day. It's not going to be something to have a row about, is it? It's going to be all right.
Yeah, it's going to be an okay
crossed.
day. Let's see if Alex Deacon would agree with that.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For some, a real soaker today, but for parts of eastern England, it'll be mostly dry and really quite warm here. In fact, warm air has been wafting north for the past 24 hours, producing some heavy pulses of rain overnight. Met Office yellow warning in place. That heavy rain tracking into parts of Scotland through the day, and then further pulses of heavy rain for Wales and southwest England. Some drier interludes likely across Northern Ireland, and as I mentioned at the start, much of eastern England will stay dry. Parts of East Anglia in the southeast should see some sunshine, which will lift the temperatures up to 20, maybe 21 degrees. Even where it's raining, really quite mild, but it's quite humid, it's quite dank, it's quite misty and murky, and further pulses of rain likely to spread up from France and over the Channel through the evening and overnight. So again, pretty wet through this evening. The evening rush hour on the M4, the M5, not very clever. Parts of Northern Ireland, again, not wet all day. There'll be some drier spells here, but more showers also coming up from the south. Turning a bit dry this evening across parts of Scotland, but again, staying pretty grey, pretty murky. A lot of mist and low cloud on some of the higher routes, and further pulses of rain then come across northern England into southern Scotland during this evening. And then it starts to turn wetter too over eastern England overnight, so some heavy bursts of rain coming in here. Then turning a little drier and a little clearer for Wales and southwest England. Another very warm night with many places staying in double digits and a few likely to stay in the teens. So yes, still pretty warm on Thursday, turning a little fresher, drier day, certainly for Wales and southwest England, some good spells of sunshine. We'll steadily see the rain clearing away from East Anglia in the southeast, taking a little longer to clear from northeast Scotland. A few showers later for Wales and the southwest and Northern Ireland too, but many places looking fine and sunny tomorrow, and although not as warm and humid as today, still temperatures above average.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Ed Barker, a talented saxophonist and clarinetist from London, has had a remarkable journey in the music industry marked by significant achievements and an unusual crossover into the political sphere. Having honed his musical skills from a young age, he played in both the National Youth Orchestra and the National Youth Jazz Orchestra. In 2012, he became the solo saxophonist for pop legend George Michael. His reputation in music opened doors in politics, where he's worked with various leading Conservative members of Parliament and played a role in a number of major campaigns. To tell us more about the harmonious relationship between music and politics, I'm delighted to be joined by Ed Barker. This is quite puzzling, actually. How did a reputation in music get you into politics?
It's a good question. It's probably a question I'm still wrestling with at the age of 40. How's it happened? But somehow I've managed to do both, and I still enjoy doing them both at a high level. I think it's a simple thing of, when you're in politics, you're known as the saxophone guy, and when you're in the saxophone music industry world, you're known as the weird conservative political guy. And so it's just something people can remember you by, regardless of how good you are at either of those two things. I think it's just a device that people can kind of just latch onto to remember you.
But it's the word weird, because I imagine that most people in the music industry are probably somewhat to the left. Yeah. Certainly all the ones that I've met are. I mean, I can't imagine you and George Michael discussing Tory politics with approval, or maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, I don't tend to talk politics with people kind of when I'm not in politics somehow. And whenever there are political disagreements, people kind of, I think GBNews actually gets closest to kind of embodying this spirit. People are very kind of up for learning from each other's kind of experiences and views and not biting each other's heads off.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top two for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tomorrow as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tomorrow, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Look, we want to talk about this weight loss situation and the drugs involved in it.
Yes, and we're asking if obesity should indeed be treated as a disease. As many as 3 in 5 believe that obesity is actually a choice, and less than 10% recognise the impacts of genetics.
OK. Well, the State of Obesity report has been published. It is attempting to bridge the gap between our knowledge and the scientific truth on obesity.
So is it more than a matter of weight? Let's get the thoughts this morning of Dr. Bryony Henderson, who is a weight loss expert. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I have to say, just with this story in general, my overriding feeling is that by the government using this as a tool now in their weaponry, it kind of gives it an authenticity that ordinary people will now think it's OK to use. Just since the announcement yesterday, 2 people that I know going, maybe I need to get some of this. People who aren't fat, people who just want to lose a bit of weight. Do you share those concerns?
So it's really important that we recognise obesity for what it is, and it is a disease. However we define a disease, obesity fills each one of those criteria. It is therefore important to treat it as such with a multifaceted approach. Now, whether that's behaviour change, education and medication if appropriate. Now, it's not designed as a quick fix. It's not designed just to lose weight for the summer. This is a long-term treatment for a chronic condition.
What did you say it was? It was a disease?
Absolutely.
It's not a disease. It's not a disease. I can remember in the 60s, and if you look back our archive film of town centres, city centres, people generally walking up and down the street, the amount of fat people is very, very slim, as it were. So it's a choice.
So it depends on how do we define disease? Let's take it back a step. What is a disease? Now, there are numerous different ways that we can define a disease. Now, is it something that causes functional impairment? Now, obesity does just that. It does cause functional impairment. So it certainly fills that definition of a disease. Is it something that causes susceptibility for another disease? We know that obesity also does that. We know that with obesity...
What you're describing is the effects of obesity. Yes, obesity causes disease, but is obesity in and of itself a disease? And as Eamonn was saying, a lot of people would just argue it's because people have got greedier, people have got lazier, and the industry is just chucking poison at us all day long.
So all of those are definitions of a disease, and obesity meets each one. So is it something genetic causing a functional impairment? Yes, about 40 to 70%, we know now with scientific studies, of obesity is associated with genetics. And I think we've got to get away from this whole, it's a willpower. For years, we've been told, eat less, move more, and if you don't succeed, then you've got no willpower. Now, we know that that's really far from the case. Obesity is a really complex issue. Biopsychosocial factors at play. Willpower is just this one small, very delicate piece in a very large and intricate puzzle. And we've got to remove that stigma from treating obesity. Now, that prevents people from coming forward. It reinforces this negative self-image, creates a barrier to effective treatment. We need obesity to be recognised by everyone as a disease. As I said, it fills each one of those criteria.
Well, Doctor, the cure-all to all of this seems to be being put forward by the government, this idea of one of the drugs involved, Ozempic, which you can tell us basically, I think it was originally formulated for diabetes type 2, and now they say, oh, well, if it keeps weight off and it helps you lose weight, this is a great thing. Now, that sounds super, that sounds fantastic, except I was reading in the papers at the weekend, there are side effects. There's no such thing as a free lunch.
And there never is in medicine. There's always a risk-benefit for everything that we do within medicine, within life indeed as well. But you're quite right, Eamonn. Ozempic has been used for many years, coming up 20 years, in fact, for type 2 diabetics. Wegovy is the obesity management of the drug. It's the same drug within Ozempic and Wegovy. Now, both of these drugs contain something called GLP-1. Now, that is a hormone that is naturally released by the gut, which makes you feel fuller for longer. Now, Ozempic and Wegovy are copies of this natural hormone. Now, we have a fairly good idea of the safety profile of these medications. In fact, with Ozempic, the one that's been used for diabetics, we've got over 10 million patient years worth of experience in using that drug. Although Wegovy has only come on a little bit later, we know that the side effects of Ozempic over this time period. They are also natural copies, so agonists of this naturally occurring hormone. So we've got a fairly good idea of the safety profile. However, there is always a risk-benefit of everything. That we know the risks of obesity, type 2 diabetes, chances of heart failure, cancer, joint replacements, etc. So we know those risks. There's always that risk-benefit, and doctors, healthcare professionals will be able to talk you through everything.
Okay.
Well, Doctor, thanks for talking us through that this morning. I wish we had more time to talk about, what the downside of Ozempic may be. But thanks for getting the conversation going. We'll say goodbye to you. Thank you.
And if anybody at home has any personal stories of it and, wants to share them with us, you can do so by going to gbnews.com/yoursay.
We could be putting on a lot of money into your bank account. Could you deal with that? 36,000 quid, have a go.
There's only 2 weeks for luck.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M61 in Lancashire is closed southbound from junction 8 at Chorley to 6 at Horwich after an accident. On the M25 in Berkshire, the clockwise exit at junction 15 for the eastbound M4 is closed after an accident. Diversions are onto the westbound M4 to junction 5 at Langley and back again. In Dorset, the A353 is closed each way between Warnwell and Preston because of mud on the road. In Devon, the A30 is closed eastbound from Widden down to Cheriton Bishop after an accident. And also in Devon, the A374 is closed westbound across Lara Bridge Road into Plymouth because of an oil spill. And in Cornwall, the A38 is closed each way between Comino Cross at Bodmin and 12 Woods roundabout at Dobwalls. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
National Trust Director General has said something rather curious. She's admitted that 70% of the charity's staff are Union Jack-hating progressive activists. Yes, this was speaking at a Labour Party fringe event. The boss of the charity, Hilary McGrady, acknowledged that there was a gap between her staff's views and the views held by the wider public. So was she being honest? Joining me now to discuss this is historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadel-Mancu, who I believe is with me. Rafe, thank you very much indeed. Can this be true?
The founders of the National Trust and later figures involved in it, like my hero James Lees-Milne, were really motivated by love of nation. But I think that love of nation in the Trust has become actively, national self-loathing. And that's really the state of modern Britain. And with the Trust, I mean, what we've done is we've actually entrusted our national heritage to those people who actually actively despise our national heritage. And it's, it's utter madness.
Have these people wanted to take over charities like the National Trust for their political ends, or is it just something that happens? Is it just the type of people who work in charities?
This has been part of the long march through the institutions, that people need to understand that Britain is now a post-revolutionary society. So the buildings that house our institutions look the same, but the people who now run them bear no comparison to the generations who lovingly built and ran them. They are cuckoos in the nest, and we need to understand that. And of course, once you realize that, of course, that explains completely why, the National Trust and others have crudely tried to denigrate our national heroes and link them and their houses to colonialism and slavery, as they ludicrously tried to do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Listen, a lot of reaction to the assisted dying, which we're going to talk about at 7:05. I'm going to talk about it to Esther Ranson's daughter. Esther Ranson is suffering with stage 4 lung cancer. There is no stage 5. So I have to say that what we're seeing here is most of you in favour of the right to have assisted dying. You now have the right to listen to Mr. Paul Coit and everything. So it's an international week. And
Thomas Tuchel,
yeah,
New England manager.
Yeah.
Although it's not actually been announced.
Right.
Everybody's saying it because we know that this is what's happening. There's going to be a press conference this afternoon that the FA are going to hold, and Tuchel will be brought out, wheeled out, and then say his words, etc. But it comes off the back of the fact that England have played these 2 games, and also with Lee Carsley as well. Now, Lee Carsley had said, which was really interesting in the last interview he did, that England need a world-class manager that has won trophies. And you think, well, what do you mean by that exactly? What is he? And he obviously knew. So he was referring to Thomas Tuchel. There's no way he didn't know about this. So Tuchel comes in. He was at Chelsea, won the Champions League with Chelsea, so successful there. Although everywhere he's been, he's left almost under a cloud, and I think there's a reason for that. Chelsea, Paris Saint-Germain, and also Bayern Munich. Now, he's dealing with very difficult boards at these places. When he was at Chelsea, this is when Todd Boehly came in and the Americans came in. They wanted to sweep the place clean, get rid of him, move into someone else. So that's been the difference. PSG and also Bayern Munich, very difficult board as well. I think it's going to be OK. I
thought Eric Cantona was brilliant yesterday, making his statement about how he believes Alex Ferguson's been treated at Manchester United.
Yeah, no mention of the seagulls on the... He was just told it straight, didn't he? He just dropped the S-bomb on him. He should be able to do anything he wants at the club until the day he dies. Such a lack of respect. It is totally scandalous. I am actually... I know it's a weird thing, but I can't really see the problem or too much of a problem here. Alex Ferguson, this is the story, 82 years old, of course, club legend, won goodness knows, what was it, how many trophies that he's won over the years. But he's on a £2 million a year salary as an ambassador and an ambassadorial role. Now, they're making so many cuts at Manchester United, and it was decided he had a meeting with Sir Jim Radcliffe, and it was said that we're not prepared to pay this sort of money anymore.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a huge amount of money. Now, also, does it compromise the situation of Erik ten Hag? The fact that the ghosts of the past are going into the dressing room. Bobby Charlton did it, but also for Sir Alex Ferguson to go in, it's almost like this is the greatest guy, but there's another manager that's trying to manage you. I think they have total respect for Sir Alex Ferguson. I think he'll be able to do whatever he wants going in to Manchester United. There's always going to be a seat for him. But to pay £2 million, personally, I think is a lot of money, and I can understand why they've done it. But I don't think it's a disrespectful thing.
The internationals last night, amazing result for Northern Ireland.
5-0. And I've been looking back on the results of Northern Ireland for the past half an hour. 5-0, greatest ever win was Cyprus 71. 5-0 against the Faroe Islands 1991. Bulgaria, different kettle of fish. What a great result that is. So they've done excellent. Really, really great result. Scotland 0, Portugal 0. Good result for them, and they've avoided 5 losses on the trot, which would have been a record.
Now, when you come back, we're going to be talking about controversy.
Oh, my goodness
the World Conquer Championship.
Oh, I can't even begin to think about it.
I think just let him cheat. Anyway, we'll talk about that later on. Thank you.
I don't think he did cheat, though. I don't think he did. I don't think he did. I don't think
Okay. Right, stay with us. Coming up, we're going to be joined by the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, that is Richard Tice. He's in the building. He'll be here in just a moment.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're talking catchphrases and jingles because, of course, instantly recognisable and sometimes a little annoying in the case of the Go Compare one, perhaps. An iconic advertising jingle can stay in your head all day and sometimes stand the test of time. Sound expert and music designer for some of the world's most renowned companies, Michael Boumendil, joins us now. Good morning, Michael. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
First of all, what is the secret ingredient, the secret recipe for a hit jingle that stands the test of time over the decades?
Well, I have to say that secret 100 years ago is not the secret today, because today all the brands are using music. So the first secret is to stand out, is to make something different, to do something interesting. The other thing I believe is to do something that is true to the brand, that is talking to you. You know, it's not only about the memorability, but it's about telling something about the brand. You know, when I hear you, your voice, your tone of voice says not only who you are, I can recognize your voice, but it says a lot about your mood, your personality. So the other reason why we make successful jingles is because they're catchy, because they're different, but also because they say something to us that is interesting, and finally keeping this link between the brand and the customers.
Michael, tell us about your involvement in the new Maybelline jingle. This makes me, I mean, I haven't heard it, but it makes me a little bit sad because I was an avid Maybelline concealer user for many years. Other brands are available, but the jingle was the main reason why I got bought into it.
You don't have to be sad, because we kept most of the legacy.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tomorrow as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tomorrow, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We have now live in the studio, we're delighted to welcome Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. Richard, good morning.
Very good morning to you.
Your main concern today, you're really worried about the production of steel in this country and how
we're not going to be doing it for too much longer.
Yes, I've got a Westminster Hall debate at 9:30, and if we're not very careful, and nobody's talking about this, within 6 to 12 months, we will have zero general steelmaking capacity in the United Kingdom.
That we should be able to produce our own steel. Why is that?
Because after food and water, steel is the most important component of a modern civilization. It's more important than the internet. Without steel, you've got nothing. You've got no buildings, no homes, no cars, nothing. You're literally back to mud huts. And yet, within a year, we could be making zero steel on our own basis. And that's a disaster. And, you know, many other countries all over the world, we'll be the only G20 nation that has no steel-making capacity. Think about that. And we keep hearing from governments, oh, we're world-leading in this, we're world-leading in that. We are literally world-leading in naive, negligent stupidity if we let this industry go. What the government must do, I'm calling for a five-point plan. The government must take a strategic stake in the Scunthorpe plants of British Steel. We've got to cut all the carbon taxes that exist. We've got to stop Chinese dumping of cheap steel into the UK. Unbelievably, at the moment, we're actually reducing the tariffs. So we've got to do that, and we should buy British. All public sector procurement should buy British. It's a great thing. There's nothing better than British steel.
To be clear, though, there is, you know, the government is not suggesting they are going to end British steel making in this country in any way. Obviously, we've seen Tata Steel stop producing it last month, but they're planning to. They're in this transition phase, and by 2027, they're going to have these electric blast furnaces. Now, I know you're sceptical because of the cost of those, because they have to get up to 1,000 degrees or something, but that's their plan. I mean, they're publishing the details.
It's all very well having a plan, but the truth is neither Tata nor, I believe, Jingye, who own British Steel in Scunthorpe, I don't think they'll build the electric arc furnaces because they won't be viable. And the National Grid have said they can't get the quantity of power to Scunthorpe for the electric arc furnaces for 6 or 7 years. We've got the most expensive electricity in the developed world, which means these electric arc furnaces won't be viable. And once you've closed a blast furnace, it's finished, it's done.
Is there much to be said for foreign ownership? Are we in part of this trouble because of foreign ownership? Tata, who own hotels, who own airlines, who dabble car production as well. Would it make a difference if it actually was a British company behind this?
For strategic industries like steel, I actually do think the government should have a strategic public ownership stake. But we're our own worst enemy. Because the truth is, net zero has driven all of this. It's driven high electricity prices, it's driven the carbon taxes, and it's driven the desire to get rid of these blast furnaces. No other nations are doing this. I mean, the majority of new steelmaking capacity around the world is blast furnaces. People are laughing at our stupidity, and that's just absurd.
Yeah, well, the government have said that they're committed to £2.5 billion of investment to rebuild the UK steel industry and to support communities now and for generations to come. I suppose the question really should be, how can we make cheap electricity? Why isn't that a priority? Why are we paying 50% more for electricity in this country than in France? Then we could have green steel, and that could be something to be...
Very simple. We've got expensive electricity because of our obsession with net zero. And there's a direct link between the increase in our renewable generating capacity and the increase in our electricity prices. And for the government obsessed with wind turbines, not a single bit of British steel is used in manufacturing all of these wind turbines.
Wrong, isn't it?
It's completely ludicrous.
It's wrong. But does that mean to say that you're ignoring net zero or that you're ignoring climate change?
I'm not ignoring anything. Climate change is real. It's been real for millions of years. It'll be real for the next million years. It'll be much cheaper to adapt to it. And let me just remind you, China, India, Vietnam, they're building blast furnaces as though they're going out of fashion so that they can have cheap, strong steel. Blast furnaces make the strongest steel. Electric arc furnaces, new technology, it's nearly as strong, but it's not quite as good.
The thing that gets me is we're responsible for 1% of the pollution here, and yet we're doing all these things, all these cuts are instigated. And these countries that are responsible for so much of the producing and the carbon manifestation, where's the fairness in that? Why
There's no fairness at all. It is naive, it is foolish, and it's negligent, and it's disgraceful for the communities. Down in Port Talbot, where I've been, I wasn't allowed to talk to 1,000 steelworkers by the unions They thought that, you know, I might talk about net zero and what a shocking thing that would be. You know, that's no way to represent your workers. So I just think we are being really foolish in this country, and we are destroying our industrial base, exposing ourselves, making ourselves vulnerable to imports. And it's all very well when the sun shines. But do you remember in 2020, we nearly ran out of paracetamol because it was all made in India. Some of this stuff's quite important. I'd quite like it made here, please.
Richard Tice, thank you very much indeed. The clock's beaten us. We've got to say goodbye to you. Thank you very much indeed. And we'll have the newspapers, so what we can of them, very shortly, right after the weather update.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For some, a real soaker today, but for parts of eastern England, it'll be mostly dry and really quite warm here. In fact, warm air has been wafting north for the past 24 hours, producing some heavy pulses of rain overnight. Met Office yellow warning in place. That heavy rain tracking into parts of Scotland through the day, and then further pulses of heavy rain for Wales and southwest England. Some drier interludes likely across Northern Ireland, and as I mentioned at the start, much of eastern England will stay dry. Parts of East Anglia in the southeast should see some sunshine, which will lift the temperatures up to 20, maybe 21 degrees. Even where it's raining, really quite mild, but it's quite humid, it's quite dank, it's quite misty and murky, and further pulses of rain likely to spread up from France and over the Channel through the evening and overnight. So again, pretty wet through this evening. The evening rush hour on the M4, the M5, not very clever. Parts of Northern Ireland, again, not wet all day. There'll be some drier spells here, but more showers also coming up from the south. Turning a bit dry this evening across parts of Scotland, but again, staying pretty grey, pretty murky. A lot of mist and low cloud on some of the higher routes, and further pulses of rain then come across northern England into southern Scotland during this evening. And then it starts to turn wetter too over eastern England overnight, so some heavy bursts of rain coming in here. Then turning a little drier and a little clearer for Wales and southwest England. Another very warm night with many places staying in double digits, and a few likely to stay in the teens. So yes, still pretty warm on Thursday. Turning a little fresher, drier day, certainly for Wales and southwest England. Some good spells of sunshine. We'll steadily see the rain clearing away from East Anglia in the southeast, taking a little longer to clear from northeast Scotland. A few showers later for Wales and the southwest and Northern Ireland too. But many places looking fine and sunny tomorrow. And although not as warm and humid as today, still temperatures above average.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We say hello, good morning to Ian Paisley Jr., former MP, and Susie Stride, former Labour candidate. Very good to see you both. And we're talking about, first of all, this idea of assisted dying. In Esther Ranson, front page of the Daily Express today. Time is running out. I need your help to change cruel law. And they start debating it or proposing it tonight.
Yeah, well, this is the sort of thing which starts with Esther and ends with everyone. And that's what worries me. That was the Canadian issue, where it started with one very, very specific, difficult case, and then suddenly it's been widened and widened and widened. And one thing I always heard in Parliament was, law doesn't work right, it needs to constantly be changed. But we're being told in this issue, we'll create a law that works. They won't. They'll create a law which then creates more problems. And I think that we really need to stand back from this. This is a slippery slope. It's a real problem. And we need a national conversation in this country about death and dying, managing pain, and we need to put money into palliative care and help Marie Curie nurses and other nurses in the system to give the love and care and compassion that needs to be given to people at the end of their life.
Yeah, Susie, why don't we talk about the failings of palliative care? I mean, I was giving the example earlier of a loved one in my extended family who was dying on a weekend, and the palliative team did not operate in that part of Yorkshire on the weekend. Yeah. That's not acceptable. People are choosing to end their lives early because they can't have a dignified death. Yeah. Surely that's the discussion.
Yeah, I think I would say this is the scandal. You know, this is the scandal that, you know, I remember when my grandma was dying, and it just so happened, you know, we just fought for her to get the right care. But, like, it shouldn't be that way. You know, it's already a very stressful situation, you know, and so, yeah, I think there needs to be a massive change on that. There has to be a massive reform. There has to be this respect and dignity for life.
Susie,
you know?
The thing I always pick up on is when someone's dying, they say, oh, he's done, oh, he's had it, he's had a great life. So you get rid of them. That's not what life's about.
Yeah.
Life's much more secret than that. And I think...
But what if you're in awful pain? What if the family's witnessing...
Eamonn, you're in awful pain. Are you done?
Yes.
No, you're not.
I am.
No, you're not. There's an inspiration for life holding on and giving more. You have stuff still to give, even though you're in pain. And I just think we need to move away from this stuff. Oh, I'm suffering. Yes, life's tough. But there is a way through this.
Yeah, I have to say, I think I agree on that. But, I might change my mind when we speak to Rebecca Wilcox, Esther's daughter, a little bit later on, because she makes a powerful argument.
Susie, Rachel Reeves, what's she preparing us for in this budget, or what's she not telling us? And is tax on employers, national insurance, is that a tax on all of us? What do you make about the dilemma she is in?
I mean, this is the thing. I think it's really, you used the word dilemma. No one wants to, increase national insurance contributions, but I just think, we are in this tough spot as a country, and ultimately we've got this big black hole, however much it is, the numbers keep changing, and, we need to find the finances to, we need to invest in the NHS, we need to invest in education, and so, and I can see why this is unpopular, but I just think they're in a difficult place. I'm definitely not an economist, but I'm like, something is going to have to give. I just want to say, I think there is a bigger picture. I mean, I've just been in America. I've just spent a month in America. I was in Silicon Valley.
Nice tan.
Yes, went to Hawaii as well. But, and my friend is a scientist there, and he is just so... just frustrated by this brain drain from Britain, that we have the expertise, we have the ideas, we were cutting edge on AI.
We're overtaxing people. We're taxing this country till it sweeps.
But also just like the investment's not there, the risk-taking's not there, and this is, I think there's a bigger picture here.
Ian, I think you raise an excellent point there. The tax, how on earth they get away with it, all of them, the Conservatives, Labour, whatever. Everything is taxed. Everything you do, even when you earn money and pay tax on it, you pay tax again through inheritance tax.
We're in the middle of a global summit for employment and growth. And what's the government talking about? Taxing pensions, taxing national insurance, or addressing national insurance, taking more of our tax grab. And this is going to affect the workers, the people who we're expecting to grow and increase productivity. We should be addressing this by saying, let's cut tax. Let's, for example, reduce corporation tax, make this the most attractive people for investors to stay and to grow the economy that way and attract more people.
Guys, got to leave it there, and you'll be back again in 45 minutes. But we will hit the break, and we're back with the news headlines after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M61 in Lancashire is closed southbound from junction 8 at Chorley to 6 at Horwich after an accident. On the M4 in Berkshire, the clockwise exit at junction 15 to the eastbound M4 is closed because of an accident. Diversions are onto the westbound M4 to junction 5 at Langley and back again. In Dorset, the A353 is closed each way between Warnwell and Preston because of mud on the road. In Devon, the A30 is closed eastbound from Widden down to Cheriton Bishop after an accident. Also in Devon, the A374 is closed westbound along Lara Bridge Road towards Plymouth because of an oil spill, and in Cornwall the A38 is closed each way between the 12 Woods roundabout at Dobwalls and the A30 at Carmina Cross at Bodmin because of flooding and mud. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
There's only two luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. A swift meeting. The scandal the Prime Minister can't seem to shake off.
Well, it's now revealed that he had a 10-minute meeting with the global superstar, when he attended her concert in London.
This was following the approval of a VIP police escort for the singer, organised by his former Chief of Staff, Sue Gray.
Meanwhile, the Chancellor has told Cabinet Ministers that plans to fill the £22 billion black hole will be enough only to keep public services standing still.
It comes as she's accused of hypocrisy after it's emerged that she criticised Rishi Sunak on national insurance rises in 2022, calling it the worst possible tax rise.
Assisted dying is set to return to Parliament as a new bill is formally introduced in the House of Commons.
And staggering new figures show 20% of Welsh children are illiterate by the time they reach secondary school.
And a new survey finds that the majority of parents say fines for unauthorised absences wouldn't deter them from taking their children out of school for a holiday. OK, so we're asking, should you be fined for kids missing term time, or should you be sent to jail?
Fair enough. And in the sport this morning, it's not Pep or Klopp. Thomas Tuchel will be unveiled as the New England manager this afternoon. Are Manchester United disrespecting Sir Alex Ferguson? And new marathon world record holder Richard Whitehead joins us in about 20 minutes' time.
It's a warm Wednesday for all, a wet day for some, though. Find out whether you'll be soggy or dry with a full forecast coming up later.
1 minute past 7 o'clock. A very good morning to you on this Wednesday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes. Indeed, on the Tuesday morning, I was Eamonn Holmes as well. And as far as I know, on Monday morning.
Yes,
yes,
you're always Eamonn.
I'm not just Eamonn Holmes on a Wednesday morning.
Okay. I'm only Isabel Webster on a Wednesday. But this is GB News, and we're here with breakfast every day.
Paul, the Thomas...
I love it when you're Eamonn Holmes, by the way. I love it when you're Eamonn Holmes.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I like it when he's George Clooney myself.
Thomas Tuchel.
Yes, sir.
So he did the business at Chelsea, but he left there under controversy.
Yes.
He now looks like he's going to be the man, though not confirmed, as head of the England football team. I'm disappointed because if we were to have a replacement manager at Man United, I would have wished for him.
Yeah.
What's your view on the man and his abilities?
I think he'll be good, actually. And the two things, you mentioned the Manchester United thing. I think this decision has been pushed through maybe a little quicker. It's like, let's get this done because Manchester United must be sniffing around thinking he'd be good for us with Erik ten Hag. The other thing is so many people saying, well, you know, it'd be better if we had an English manager. But then who are the other names that everybody wanted? Jurgen Klopp, German. Pep Guardiola is Spanish. So they're probably the big three. I think it's going to be a success. I think he's worked with Harry Kane. He knows how to work with him. When he was at Bayern Munich, Harry Kane scored loads of goals. He's going to play to his strengths. I think it will be good. I think he will. I think he'll have success as England manager. At first, I was thinking, I'm slightly underwhelmed, but the more I've looked into it, more I've thought about it, I think it's a good decision. Okay. And hopefully things will work out, but not till January.
We'll talk more in depth in 20 minutes' time. Thank you.
Right, let's talk about Taylor Swift, shall we? Because this is the story that keeps on giving, and the freebie scandal continues to cause headaches for the Prime Minister, as it's now been revealed that he met with Swift at her Wembley gig back in August on the day that Downing Street intervened to grant her a VIP security escort.
So is the real right, not that he met her, or not that this was some sort of payola, but that she in return got a free VIP escort? Is that the controversy?
Yeah, lots of... Well, I think there's just extra layers to it. I mean, at the time this picture came out, everybody said how lovely. They are supporting the British economy at this big gig. And then it turns out they had a little tete-a-tete and sorted out blue lights for the superstar.
My question is, what on earth does a 60-year-old man want to go and see a teen idol?
It was a family outing. He took his kids as well.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, and she's mega.
That would be my idea of hell. Well, where are we going, Dad? We're going to see Taylor Swift.
I'd love to have gone.
Anyway.
But anyway, the Prime Minister and his family reportedly spoke with the pop star for a whopping 10 minutes. And they were given free tickets to one of her gigs in the summer.
OK, who are we going to talk to about this? Nigel Huddleston MP is there. I don't know if he... Nigel, good morning to you. Did you go and see Taylor Swift?
I'm afraid I didn't, no. I was not invited, yeah.
Oh, right, OK.
I just want to start this little interview with some breaking news, because I'm just hearing that inflation has fallen below the 2% target for the first time in 3 years, which is great news for the government, and it's the sort of figures that Rishi Sunak had been seeking for the whole time.
Well, indeed, but I have to say, on the Taylor Swift thing, let's be clear, that's not a good look, is it, for the Prime Minister?
Well, we can come on to that in a minute, but I just want your reaction to...
But the inflation... Yeah, so it's obviously good news that inflation is falling again. Of course, a lot of the dynamics of the economy mean that inflation figures are coming down largely as a result of the work of the previous government, because what this government's been doing with inflation-busting pay rises, for example, might compromise the direction of travel there. But it's good news because, of course, this was a key strategy and key target of the last government, and we had to make difficult decisions in order to bring inflation down. So I welcome the numbers, but I fear what may come next.
Yeah, but Nigel, sorry, just on this point, does it not just make you a little bit frustrated that Rishi Sunak jumped the gun so early in calling that election?
Well, look, there was never a good time to call an election.
Well, it might have been better
always
to
a
do it after
difficult
these figures.
challenge. Look, at the end of the day, we're going through a lot of soul-searching at the moment as to why we lost the last election. The economy was one aspect of it, but let's be clear, there was a lot of other factors why the British public were frustrated with us, and we're in a listening mode at the moment to understand that.
Yeah.
But I am glad that these figures have come down. Look, I do want to welcome good news in the economy, because after all, this government has done nothing but taught the UK economy down since they came to power, which itself is causing damage. But I welcome these figures. This is good news for the UK economy. But let's be clear, this is not a result of government policy, current government policy.
OK. Nigel, let me ask you, when you know, so much is made of this black hole of £2.2 billion, and now Rachel Reeves is saying, even if we pay that off, the economy will only be standing still. We're going to have to do more. So we all dread what the heck's going to happen in this Halloween horror of a budget that is coming our way and that she's not talking about. What would you, if you were in power, what would the Conservatives, do you think, do with that black hole? My point being, do we necessarily have to address it?
Well, look, there's a black hole, or the government's calling a black hole, because of political choices they are making about the spending decisions they themselves are making. We had budgets, Jeremy Hunt had budgets, and we had forecasts, and we worked with the OBR to make sure that we spent within our means. That's the point of having fiscal events. This government, since they came to power, has had £10 billion splurge on inflation-busting pay increases, spent billions of pounds on GB Energy, billions of pounds on a national wealth fund, and a whole bunch of other announcements and measures. So if there is a black hole, let's be clear, it's of their own making. We're talking about billions of pounds out of a total government spending of £1.2 trillion as well. So this is all in the context of decisions that a government makes about its tax and spending plans. But even if there was a multi-billion pound tax hole that they said that they inherited, then why dig that hole deeper with all of these additional spending commitments? It shows utter incompetence by this government and this Chancellor.
Yeah, the Shadow Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, was working on the estimate of around £8.9 billion, wasn't he, that he needed to plug. Can we talk, though, about your claim there that the government have been talking the country down and that these inflation figures have got nothing to do with anything that they've done? Well, we've had this huge investment summit. They've managed to attract twice the investment that the Conservatives did at the same event a year ago. It obviously isn't that bad. The business is saying they want security and stability, and they obviously feel they're getting that.
I don't think that's the case at all. I think Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, said he was surprised by some of the government's plans for growth because that was different from what he had been hearing. And of course, about half of those announcements were things that we were working on when we were in power. So I welcome that investment. But let's be clear, a lot of that has been in the pipeline for a long period of time. But this government has literally, since they came to power, done nothing than talk this country down. They've talked the economy down. And surprise, surprise, therefore, there is caution about investment investment in the UK because, you know, they're meant to be ambassadors. They're meant to be talking the country up. It's as if they haven't realised they're in government now. They're still operating as if they're in opposition, constantly saying negative things. It is the responsibility of government to talk positively and to manage the government's finances appropriately and send signals of optimism and confidence about the UK economy. I don't know, have you heard that from this government? Because I certainly haven't.
Well, let me ask you, Nigel, is a tax on employers' contributions to national insurance a tax on workers or not?
Absolutely, clearly it is, because whenever a government dips into the finances of a business, it basically means that there's less money available for investment or wage increases. And let's be clear, the manifesto that the Labour Party stood on at the last election very clearly said we will not increase national insurance. No caveat, no footnote explaining or justifying that. It was very clearly we will not increase national insurance, and it's perfectly fair and reasonable for most people and most businesses to assume that that meant employee and employer national insurance. So that was a sleight of hand there. It basically is an admission now by, I think, the comments from both Keir Starmer and the Chancellor, is that we cannot believe a word in any manifesto that Labour ever write again.
Now, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the Taylor Swift story, that I can't believe the amount of mileage it's still generating. It's even on the front of the left-leaning Guardian this morning. But what do you make of it all? Because, you know, there she was. This is a global superstar. She'd had to cancel events in Vienna because of a threat there. It was in the wake of the Southport attacks, which had happened on a Taylor Swift-themed party. Surely she, if anyone, was entitled to a VIP police escort, even if it is at the taxpayer's expense. Does it matter that the Prime Minister met with her as well?
Well, I think it's important for a government to support international events like this, whether they're football events or music events. They are incredible contributors to the UK economy, and one of my ministerial roles, I used to oversee some of that. But that's a different thing from taking freebies and giving things in return, which appears to be the case here. So I do think it looks really bad. Now, we don't know the full details of what was said in return for what, but we're very restrictive in terms of those blue lights and those escorts. It's restricted usually for international dignitaries, royal families and so on. It's very rare. In fact, I've not heard this before, for it to be extended to a superstar, and quite frankly somebody who is a billionaire themselves and could probably afford those services without having to rely on taxpayers in the UK to do it. We welcome Taylor Swift. She's always welcome here. But that kind of special favour seemed extraordinary, and it just doesn't look good in the context of all those freebie tickets, not just to Keir Starmer, but many others.
Nigel, just to finish with, we're reintroducing this assisted dying argument tonight in the Commons, and I just wondered where you stood on that.
You know, this is an area that's so sensitive, and I have changed my mind on this issue over the years about 5 times. Interestingly, I stood in the 2010 election in Luton South, where one of my opponents was Dame Esther Ranson, and we've been texting and messaging backwards and forwards on this because she's got very strong views on this and can be very persuasive. But I've also had constituents come to me in surgeries, and they then sway me the other way when they say, you know, some of whom, for example, have been to Dignitas and they supported families, and they now say that they regretted it because they felt guilty for the rest of their lives helping their family members die. So I'm really agonising over this, as I can assure you most MPs are, because we know how serious it is. I can see the arguments for, but I need to see really carefully what the caveats and what the actual legislation says, because it needs to be really carefully worded for me to support it. And I think quite a lot of colleagues are thinking the same.
Appreciate your thoughts. Thank you very much. And I think a lot of people will identify with what you're saying there, the whole dilemma with this sort of thing. Nigel Huddleston, we will have to say goodbye to you. Thanks for your time this morning. Nigel is the Shadow Financial Secretary.
Right, it's 7:14. Let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning. A court has heard Sarah Sharif had to wear a hijab to hide the facial injuries she received in the lead-up to her death. The 10-year-old was beaten with objects, burnt with an iron and bitten in the weeks before she died. Her father's on trial, along with her stepmother and uncle, and they are all denying murder.
Tributes are being paid to the former head of the British Army, that's General Sir Mike Jackson. He's died at the age of 80. He's been described as a tremendous and inspirational leader.
A ship carrying the first group of migrants from Italy will arrive in Albania today, marking the official start of a controversial plan to process thousands of asylum seekers in the Balkan nation. The Italian naval vessel will transfer an initial group of 16 migrants as part of that deal to send up to 36,000 asylum seekers to the country every year.
The composition of societies around the world is changing beyond belief. I mean, we've seen this in Ireland really graphically. Albania, I mean, so we worry about Albanian migrants coming to this country, but now Italy is sending African migrants to Albania to live a life there and to be, you know, to exist there, whatever. So what's your view? Let us know.
It's 7:15. Let's take a look at the forecast now with Alex Deakin.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For some, a real soaker today, but for parts of eastern England, it'll be mostly dry and really quite warm here. In fact, warm air has been wafting north for the past 24 hours, producing some heavy pulses of rain overnight. Met Office yellow warning in place. That heavy rain tracking into parts of Scotland through the day, and then further pulses of heavy rain for Wales and southwest England. Some drier interludes likely across Northern Ireland, and as I mentioned at the start, much of eastern England will stay dry. Parts of East Anglia and the southeast should see some sunshine, which will lift the temperatures up to 20, maybe 21 degrees. Even where it's raining, really quite mild, but it's quite humid, it's quite dank, it's quite misty and murky, and further pulses of rain likely to spread up from France and over the Channel through the evening and overnight. So again, pretty wet through this evening. The evening rush hour on the M4, the M5, not very clever. Parts of Northern Ireland, again, not wet all day. There'll be some drier spells here, but more showers also coming up from the south. Turning a bit dry this evening across parts of Scotland, but again, staying pretty grey, pretty murky. A lot of mist and low cloud on some of the higher routes, and further pulses of rain then come across northern England into southern Scotland during this evening. And then it starts to turn wetter too over eastern England overnight, so some heavy bursts of rain coming in here. Then turning a little drier and a little clearer for Wales and southwest England. Another very warm night with many places staying in double digits and a few likely to stay in the teens. So yes, still pretty warm on Thursday. Turning a little fresher, drier day, certainly for Wales and southwest England. Some good spells of sunshine. We'll steadily see the rain clearing away from East Anglia and the southeast, taking a little longer to clear from northeast Scotland. A few showers later for Wales and the southwest and Northern Ireland too. But many places looking fine and sunny tomorrow. And although not as warm and humid as today, still temperatures above average.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, the time has just turned 7:18, and I can tell you also that time is ticking away on your chance to do what, Isabel?
Wow, win £36,000 in the Great British Giveaway. There's only 2 weeks remaining. Make sure you're in it if you want to win it.
Coming up after the break, we've got a big interview because Dame Esther Ranson, over the front page of the papers today, she says, time is running out. I need your help to change cruel law. This is the assisted dying bill, which will be introduced in Parliament tonight. So we've got Rebecca Wilcox.
Yeah, really big interview. Her daughter coming on to hear. And as we were just hearing from the Shadow Cabinet there, Esther Ranson argues very persuasively about this. Stay with us to hear what she has to say.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top two for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tomorrow as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christie's, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tomorrow. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top two for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tomorrow as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christie's, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tomorrow. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Just emphasising to you legislation or proposed legislation is being brought before the Commons tonight for the first time in 10 years.
Yes, Dame Esther Ranson, who has stage 4 lung cancer, is urging people to write to their MPs to back this legislation.
Well, meanwhile, the Archbishop of Canterbury has warned new assisted dying laws could have disastrous consequences, he said. Joining us now, TV presenter and daughter of Dame Esther, is Rebecca Wilcox. Rebecca, good morning.
Good morning.
Rebecca, first question is, how is Mum? Anything to report there?
She's great. She probably sends her love. I'm sorry to be a pale shadow of her saying these words because she's not doing anything in Vision at the moment because after, goodness, I guess about a 50-year presenting campaign, she cannot be bothered to do the hair and makeup, which this morning I would agree with, having just rushed to the mirror in a startle and looking at my face. But she's good. She's good. She's hopeful about this new legislation. She's really hopeful that people get behind it. It's so important that we all back it by writing to your MP. If you go to any of the campaign websites, Dignity in Dying has a template. All you have to do is copy that, send it off to the email, or post it if you want to, and just show your support, because this is a free vote. You don't have, the MPs don't have to adhere to their party politics. They can go with their conscience and they can go with their constituents. So let's get this through, because assisted dying is not about suicide. It's about shortening death. It's not about ending a life. It's about ending pain.
Is this bill about ending pain? Because my understanding is it's only going to be applicable to people who have been given a terminal diagnosis in sort of a 6 to 12-month window. And the argument that they are suffering will not be enough for a judge and 2 doctors to permit them to have an assisted death.
Well, it's not about intolerable pain if you don't have a terminal diagnosis. It's about the hand in hand of pain and terminal diagnosis, because basically what we want is a dignified death. So it usually happens in those last few days of a terminal diagnosis where you've had all the brilliant palliative care that this country can give you. You're in one of the many incredible hospices. And this is nothing to say that the NHS is not a brilliant place for people to go at the end of their lives. But at the last few days, there's pain that supersedes any opioid that is around. You can't actually manage it. So many doctors have talked about seeing their own relatives in this pain, and, you know, morphine doesn't touch it. So it's about avoiding that. It's about the memories of that person being good. It's about being surrounded by your loved ones and having a gentle, good death, which is what the social care and health report said earlier this year. There's a good death and there's a bad death. Writhing in agony at the end of your life with a terminal diagnosis is not a good death. But it's not about people that live with chronic pain. Sadly, that's not what this bill is about. That needs to go into some other debate. This is about terminal diagnosis. 6 months is what we were discussing. It may be up to 12 months, but it is very much for people that are already on the way out, for want of a better word.
Yeah. Well, what are the words you can use for this situation? I just wonder, from your point of view, did you always have a view on this, or did you not think about it until what happened to your mum happened?
It's interesting. I had a point of view. It wasn't as focused as it is now. I mean, obviously, personal experience brings things into the light far more, doesn't it? I always thought, and I remember debating in my school, you know, when you had those debates about whether you should wear fur or not, the debate came up about assisted dying, and we were about 15. And I remember saying, why do we allow our pets to be put down and not people? Why do we say, OK, this is cruel for a dog to live in pain and not people? And at 15, that was a really clear point of view. I know it's far more complicated now, especially as I've been working alongside the campaign, and there are so many more details involved that you can't just simply compare a human with a dog. But it is interesting that we are so humane when it comes to our animals and not when it comes to our loved ones.
This argument, and you're talking about the wonderful palliative care we have in this country. In my own extended family, about 3 weeks ago in Harrogate, this gentleman in the extended family began to die and was in terrible pain. And there was no palliative team working at the weekend. Now, charities are speaking out today saying we shouldn't be having this assisted dying debate until we've sorted out palliative care in this country, because you should be able to have a dignified, pain-free death with the correct palliative care. What would you say to that? And also this intervention from the Archbishop of Canterbury, who points to research from Hourglass, which is a charity that works to protect the elderly. And they say that 2.7 million over 65s have been abused emotionally and physically, and that this could add undue, intense and inescapable pressure on people to end their lives.
I'm so sorry to hear about your personal experience. That's appalling. And actually, in the social care report that came out earlier this year, they talked about palliative care in this country and how it is gold standard, but, and I hate this phrase, it's a postcode lottery, so it's patchy. It's not gold standard everywhere. The fact that it doesn't happen on a weekend is ridiculous. People die 7 days a week. It should be there 7 days a week. And I'm so sorry you experienced it. What I would say also is please go back to the report and also to the Archbishop Lord Welby, that it very clearly states there is no slippery slope. So vulnerable older people are not more likely to be forced into an assisted death. That palliative care also in the countries that have this assisted dying law increases in its brilliance. It doesn't get worse, and in many cases it gets so much better. So it is not an either or, it's an alongside. And I definitely think palliative care should be something that is constantly scrutinised and well funded. I mean, basically that is what my mother is having at the moment. It is not something that we should just brush off. It's really, really important. But in this report, they spent 14 months researching all the data around the world, and they showed that the countries that have this legislation, palliative care improves. At very least, it stays the same. So that shouldn't be a worry. And I am very concerned about talking about vulnerable people feeling a burden on society. I think that is a horrible reflection upon our society, and it definitely should be looked into. But it is incredibly separate. I can't express more. It's very separate to what we are asking for. We are not asking for people with disabilities, mental incapacity, older people to be allowed into this realm of assisted dying. This is about people who absolutely are 100% cleared by doctors. There is mental capability. They're not being coerced. And actually the safeguards surrounding a new legislation like this would protect them more. There's no safeguards at the moment, which is why these people are being abused.
Well, you're asking for choice, as is your mother asking for choice. And as I say, her story, front page of the Express today, she said, I need your help to change cruel law. Rebecca, thank you for your time. Appreciate you talking to us today, and please give your mother our fondest, and I hope everything's okay. Thank you very much.
Sending her our very best. Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate it. Do let us know at home what you think about this. Already, so many of you have been getting in touch with a whole range of views. Christine is saying this is an insult to those of us who don't believe we have the right to end a life. John talks about when his dad passed away. He said he was surrounded by family and a Marie Curie palliative nurse at home. We didn't want Dr. Death to come in and put him down like a dog. Whereas Scarlett says, I'm with you, Eamonn. It's our choice, not somebody else's, to make my life if I'm in pain.
Back after the break.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M61 in Lancashire is closed southbound from junction 8 at Chorley to 6 at Horwich after an accident. In Staffordshire, the A513 is closed each way between Elford and Comberford because of a shed load. The A1M in Hertfordshire is partly blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 7 and 6 from Stevenage to Welling, causing delays. On the M25 in Berkshire, the clockwise exit at junction 15 onto the eastbound M4 is closed after an accident. In Dorset, the A353 is closed each way between Warmwell and Preston because of mud on the road. In Devon, the A30 is closed eastbound from Widden down to Cheriton Bishop after an accident. Also in Devon, the A374 is closed westbound along Lara Bridge Road into Plymouth because of an oil spill. And in Cornwall, the A38 is closed each way between the 12 Woods roundabout at Dobwalls and the A30 at Comina Cross at Bodmin because of flooding.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, Paul. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Eamonn. Good morning,
so much sport. Busy day.
It is a busy day. Well, we've got a New England manager. Hasn't been confirmed, although it is definitely going to happen.
Everywhere.
It is everywhere. Thomas Tuchel, then former Chelsea and Bayern Munich, and he was at Borussia Dortmund, and he is now going to be the next England manager. Some people saying, well, why is it not an Englishman that's taking over? We've had two before from overseas, Sven-Göran Eriksson, of course, and Fabio Capello, now Thomas Tuchel. But the thing is, everybody wanted Pep Guardiola, so I don't know whether they'd be arguing quite so much about that if Pep had taken over, because that was the talk yesterday, and now the FA have let slip that it's going to be Thomas Tuchel this afternoon. He will be unveiled.
Good stuff.
Absolutely. Also, quick word on Alex Ferguson as well, should we mention him? So Alex Ferguson, £2 million a year, the greatest name in the history of Manchester United, being let go by the club as an ambassador, probably because it's costing so much money, and they decided that, you know what, we're making cuts too. I mean, £2 million quid's a lot of money, isn't it, for an ambassador? So there's a lot of talk about disrespect towards him, but
I'd do it for $500,000.
Would you really?
Yeah, I would, honestly.
If they're listening.
I'm doing it at worth 20 quid.
Right, OK.
20 quid ambassador. I'll do anything for a free pie and watching the game. But anyway, Alex Ferguson, he'll still be around. There's no way he won't be around.
Now, I'll tell you who's around now. You've got a guest.
Oh, I do. Listen, I'm really excited about it because he's a friend of ours, Richard Whitehead, two-time gold Paralympic medalist. He's gone to Chicago, and we had the women's world record broken in Chicago in the marathon, and he's broken the world marathon record for double amputee, and he's on the line right there. Richard, congratulations, well done.
Hi everyone.
Nailed it.
I know, well, tried to. Got the old medal, bit sore, but yeah, back in the UK now, and really pleased with the result, and really worked really hard on, obviously, my running over the last 18 months. Like, you know, obviously I've been on the show before, and it's
why didn't you just get a pair of those bouncy track shoes that the girl from Kenya got this week and knocked 2 minutes?
I don't know whether they work with the blades, though, do they, Rich?
Yeah, definitely not Eamonn. I say if you get some of those, you might be able to run 2 hours as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know. Well, I don't know about that, but we'll have a go. This is what, your 80th marathon. There's no stopping you, is there? I mean, literally, there's no stopping you. And what keeps driving you on to get better and better and better? Because it's your world record that you broke anyway.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important about what is your why, especially in sport. And you hear about so many challenges and issues for disabled people at the moment, and visibility is one of them. And obviously I'm trying to increase the visibility of disability sport all over the UK and all over the world. And it's important that you show that anything's possible, whether you're just coming into the sport or, like myself, I've had 20 years of running now. And it's also really important to show that if you put the hard work in, you get the results as well. And I'm 48 years old. I still feel that I can still really push on within running and in sport. And obviously you saw the result on Sunday, 2:41. I was actually pushing for 2:35. And marathon runners are those that always try to really work really hard that first half of the marathon. I got to 18 miles. The wheels fell off. My legs didn't fall off, thank goodness. The wheels fell off. And I still got to the finish in 2:41.
Well, you enjoy it. You savour the flavour of that excellent news. Thank you very much indeed for sharing it with us today. Good.
What a guy.
He's a happy man.
What a guy. I mean, honestly, he keeps going on and on and on. Absolutely.
It's good to know that even the pros have that struggle, and it's just about pushing through, isn't it? Thank you, Coity. Appreciate it.
Right. We will take a break. We're back with the papers in just a moment, and I hope you can join us for those.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
My kingdom for a voice. Scientists have, I can't believe this story, scientists have incredibly recreated the voice of Richard III using both his skull shape and a knowledge of medieval speech patterns. Me neither. The result is that the king, who was famously killed at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, would have spoken in English close to that of a man from modern-day Yorkshire or Somerset. Let's take a listen.
The sun shines with no less light and splendour, nor does it suffer any diminution of its strength.
Let's discuss this further with Yvonne Morley-Chisholm, the voice coach behind the project, who spent 10 years researching how the monarch would have sounded. Yvonne, you can probably see from my face, I have no idea how this works. Can you enlighten me as to what all this is about?
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Dawn. So, yes, I had a mad idea 10 years ago. I normally work with actors where we have a recording of a historical person, and we do something called vocal profiling to train the actor who's going to be performing on stage or screen to move their tongue tip, their jaw, their lips, everything, and get behind the personality of who they're playing. We obviously have quite a lot of that missing from Richard. We don't have a recording of him, but I wondered how far we could go. And a key player in this has been and is Professor Caroline Wilkinson, who over a decade ago created his face, first of all, from his skull. Now, on the day we, as Shakespeare would say, shuffle off our mortal coil, every little dent and dimple in the bones says how fit and strong the muscles were. So I thought, OK, we know what his face could do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time to go through the papers this morning with the former Democratic Unionist Party MP Ian Paisley Jr. and the Labour activist Susie Stride. Welcome back to both of you. Where should we start? Should we start with this former Army Chief, Mike Jackson? He's died at the age of 80 and, well, highly decorated, hugely significant.
He was the man. He was always big everywhere. I mean, he was the guy you would go to for knowing things. Yeah.
Look, I think we'll take a moment and pause for a national hero.
Yeah.
He really was a national hero, his unforgettable, gravelly voice, you know, the cool coldness of it all. And yes, he had a licence to kill, but he also had a licence not to kill. And that was shown in Kosovo whenever he refused to follow orders to, you know, engage with Russia and other things. You know, he's a very, very cool, cold, calculating.
You met him? You knew him?
I had the honour of meeting him several times. He actually presented me with a medal for swimming once, and it was a lovely, lovely gentleman, very suave. Just you know, apparently what was called a soldier. A guy who, if you were in a tough spot, you'd want to be with him.
OK, that's Mike Jackson, who has died at the age of 80. We have interviewed him a number of times on this very programme. Susie, right, Taylor Swift.
Where do you stand on all of this and the role of the Prime Minister and Sue Gray and the escort through the city of London?
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I genuinely think this. I can't work out why we're still talking about this. Like, I genuinely can't. Like, ultimately, to me, it seems like common sense. There was a risk. Her mum may not have let her perform. We wanted her to perform because obviously it's good for our economy. You know, if something had happened, we'd all be saying, well, why wasn't the government more competent? Why didn't we do this? You know, and so, you know, I heard someone saying they probably did a bit of a cost-benefit analysis and they probably came down on the right side. I don't care that Keir Starmer went to her concert. I don't... You know, I genuinely think... I mean, I've spent 20 years working with kids in schools and families. I don't think they care. I think they think, is our government going to sort out, you know, people getting jobs, apprenticeships, you know, houses for their children so they're not having to live at home and all these are the issues that people care about.
But we're still talking about it because of the alleged cover-up. That's why we're talking about it.
But, I mean...
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's the issue of, did she get blues and twos? And then he got a meeting as a result. That's the allegation. I mean, and this goes back to full disclosure. Disclose right at the beginning. Tell the story as it is. Be absolutely out there. And there seems to be this drip, drip, drip of more and more stories about the Taylor stuff.
It's this impression of being whiter than white and above all of this. And it just seems to be unravelling this image that the Prime Minister tried to project to people. You say people don't care. I think people are worried that he isn't who they've been sold. I mean... And there's certainly big questions about the way the operation's been running behind the scenes. What on earth was Sue Gray thinking, permitting this sort of escort?
But that's been deliberately...
You don't do it based on... Yeah,
that's
probably,
been deliberately
right.
to try and
but
make...
it shows the
nothing
chaos.
to do with me, it's that Sue Gray one.
Yeah, but that shows the chaos.
She's getting a hard time in this, isn't she?
But genuinely...
She's the blame
But
child,
genuinely,
you know?
I mean, I personally just think, step back from this. I mean, to me, it's a common sense, good decision that she had that escort. You know, there had been threats and all this and security, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, like, for over 30 years, let's go back, Prime Ministers have invitations to events to meet celebrities. I mean, I remember, you know, Tony Blair meeting
Just be honest
Blur and
about it,
Oasis.
though. Just be honest about it.
Yeah, but I mean...
The cover-up.
And I understand that,
And
yeah.
just to come back to the point about this, you know, there was a risk and so therefore she was... It's not about that, because actually if every person that was good for the economy that had some sort of risk was given a blue light, things would be very different.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. You know, even members of the... Look at Harry. Prince Harry's going through the courts to claim that he is under threat. He's made these allegations against the Taliban. He feels he's not safe to bring his family here. He can't get that VVIP escort, and arguably he brings a lot to the British
Man on
economy
this
as part of the
programme, I
royal
mean,
family.
Nigel Farage has a death threat.
Indeed.
Does he not get blues and twos?
But maybe he should get that. But I just think this is a non-story, and it does concern me because I kind of feel like all the airtime that's being given to it. For me, I'm like, well, why are we not talking? I'm not saying about GBNews, but just generally, why are we not talking about? Why is this front page of newspapers?
The Guardian has even got
exactly.
the front
And I do feel that this is a bit of, you know, I've met Keir Starmer, you know, a few times, and personally, in regards to like when it comes to integrity and conviction, I think, you know, he's, you know, in the long term, people will look back and say, actually, he was a man of conviction. I don't think he's a man of, you know, and there has been some naivety and there has been some, you know, probably, you know, silly decisions made. But this isn't one of them. I just think, let it pass. Let's talk about something more important.
Silly decisions. Is appointing Thomas Tuchel, if the FA are to do that, as the New England coach, is that a silly decision, Ian?
You know, the most important thing in the football pitch is, does the manager have the dressing room? Do the guys who are going to go out there and fight in the real battle that matters, in the beautiful game, do they trust their leader? Do they trust their manager? And if this guy can inspire trust, and the current, you know, Harry Kane says he can, he seems to like him, he's given him the voice of approval. Well, if he's got the dressing room, then he should be given a chance. Now, yeah, of course, it would be lovely to have some homegrown expert doing it. I mean, I know what it's like. I mean, in Northern Ireland, what, 5-0?
Brilliant.
5-0. And I mean, but O'Neill has the dressing room.
Yeah.
He's inspired these youngsters to go out and win for Northern Ireland. And can this guy go out and inspire England to win? I hope he can.
That is always the thing. I mean, who have we got to choose from? There's 1.5 million people live where we are. And England, you know, you've got, what, 40 million people or so in England. And yet, smaller teams like Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, they seem to rise above their capabilities.
It's a small island mentality, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have to fight harder to get noticed,
Yeah.
being the page. But Eamonn, you're doing all right. You've come a long way, son. Keep at it. And one day you'll make something of your life.
I just want to say, I think there is a bit of a bigger thing here that, yeah, I mean, look, you know, let's hope he is a good manager, and I hope he is. I mean, I play football.
He's a good manager.
Yeah, he is a good manager, but I'm saying let's hope he can do it, he can deliver. But I think there's bigger things, isn't it? Like, we are the home of football. Like, we do. Why aren't we raising up, you know, good managers? Like, I'm a bit like, what's going on there? You know, I feel...
Well, the whole game is changing beyond recognition, beyond belief. And
It
big
is.
business is the thing about this.
Money.
Yeah.
But, you know, listen...
And we've passed over great managers in the past.
Yes.
With people who could have been great. English-born and bred manager. And we passed them over
Brian
because
Clough.
of... Yeah, Cloughie, exactly.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, look what happened to him in Leeds. Look at all of that stuff.
But this is how the game has changed.
Yeah.
Like, when we would come over from Belfast to Old Trafford or whatever, loads of Irish people, loads of Scottish people, loads of Welsh people. Now, all you get are loads of Chinese and Korean people. Absolutely everywhere.
The cost of a ticket, Eamonn.
Yeah, it's madness.
The average English kid out there is excluded from going to football because of the cost of a
It's
ticket.
terrible.
And I'll tell you why the average English kid or British kid is a bit second class in all of this, no matter who your club is, because the people who are coming all the way from Asia are going to buy souvenirs. They're going to head straight to the souvenir shop and they're going to spend money, whereas they're not necessarily going to spend the same amounts of money if you come from Ballymena or Bristol or wherever it happens to be. But it's all changing. It's all changing.
Let's talk about not Northern Ireland. It says NI. I mean National Insurance, Susie. And the reason I want to ask you about this particularly as a Labour activist is because we've got every single party of every single colour coming on this one. We've had Reform, we've got the Lib Dems, we've just done a Conservative round as well. Nobody from Labour. And for the last 2 days, I've been tearing my hair out when I have been speaking to the government about this. They haven't wanted to come on today, funnily enough.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hammer you on it because Rachel Reeves, it's come out, the Telegraph has done a bit of digging, and 2 years ago, she said that increasing national insurance was the worst possible tax at the worst possible time and that it would affect employees' pay packets. And the Institute for Fiscal Studies, Paul Johnson, who's become something of a, you know, above all of this, isn't he? He's quoted widely. He said, frankly, it is a breach of trust.
I think... Yeah, I mean, obviously she did say that. No one can deny that. You can't be covering that one up because it was said. I think, look, the view on this is they're stuck between a rock and a hard place because, you know, the finances of the country are not in a good place and you've got to find the money somewhere. And it's like, this is not a popular decision. I don't know if it's the right one. I'm not an economist. But ultimately, you've got to find the money to invest in the NHS, to invest in education.
You know what I'd say? I'd say you've got to find ways of making money.
I agree. 100%. And this is what I was saying before, wasn't I? Like, I've just been in America, looking at Silicon Valley. You know, there's loads of British people going over there.
That's because they're being taxed
homegrown
here.
talent.
They're being taxed to death here. That's why they're going to America.
And
that's why they're investing in America, because the risk capital is there and they're prepared to take risks. Our risk capital is being taxed.
Yeah.
Reduce corporation tax, allow people to actually breathe in this growth economy.
For me, even aside from the economics of all of this, I just feel like there is a dishonesty. You know, twice, 3 times yesterday and the day before, we said to them, are you actually trying to claim that employers are not working people, that this part of national insurance doesn't apply to employers? It's just... Yeah. I just really find it frustrating, and it affects our faith in our politicians and our democratic system. Yeah. Politicians can't just say, you know what, we boxed ourselves into a corner, we were wrong to have said that, and now we're doing this, because actually it makes financial sense, and I think people could accept it. Yeah. I don't even care about the economics.
Well, what is the skill? What is the art involved? Because, you know, you've drawn business to Northern Ireland. Not an easy thing to do to make it attractive. What's the secret? What's the key? What has the Labour government got to do?
You've got to be able to persuade people that they can come and be successful. And by that, it has to be a package, like a cocktail of measures from low tax, workers' availability, skill them up, tailor-make, bespoke the economy to fit the actual need, and be agile. This now has changed. It's no longer move quickly. If we don't move quickly, if we over-regulate, if we overtax, we slow the whole thing down. And unfortunately, we're in a very heavily regulated economy, and we've got to change that.
That's tailor-made as opposed to Taylor Swift. A whole other argument. Ian, thank you very much indeed. Susie, very good talking to you. You guys are going to be back in 40 minutes' time.
Meanwhile, here's Alex Deakin with the forecast.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For some, a real soaker today, but for parts of eastern England, it'll be mostly dry and really quite warm here. In fact, warm air has been wafting north for the past 24 hours, producing some heavy pulses of rain overnight. Met Office yellow warning in place. That heavy rain tracking into parts of Scotland through the day, and then further pulses of heavy rain for Wales and southwest England. Some drier interludes likely across Northern Ireland, and as I mentioned at the start, much of eastern England will stay dry. Parts of East Anglia and the southeast should see some sunshine, which will lift the temperatures up to 20, maybe 21 degrees. Even where it's raining, really quite mild, but it's quite humid, it's quite dank, it's quite misty and murky, and further pulses of rain likely to spread up from France and over the Channel through the evening and overnight. So again, pretty wet through this evening. The evening rush hour on the M4, the M5, not very clever. Parts of Northern Ireland, again, not wet all day. There'll be some drier spells here, but more showers also coming up from the south. Turning a bit dry this evening across parts of Scotland, but again, staying pretty grey, pretty murky. A lot of mist and low cloud on some of the higher routes, and further pulses of rain then come across northern England into southern Scotland during this evening. And then it starts to turn wetter too over eastern England overnight, so some heavy bursts of rain coming in here. Then turning a little drier and a little clearer for Wales and southwest England. Another very warm night with many places staying in double digits and a few likely to stay in the teens. So yes, still pretty warm on Thursday, turning a little fresher, drier day, certainly for Wales and southwest England, some good spells of sunshine. We'll steadily see the rain clearing away from East Anglia and the southeast, taking a little longer to clear from northeast Scotland. A few showers later for Wales and the southwest and Northern Ireland too, but many places looking fine and sunny tomorrow, and although not as warm and humid as today, still temperatures above average.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the A1M in North Yorkshire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed southbound between junctions 44 and 43 towards the M1 after an accident. There are queues from junction 45 at Boston Spa. The M61 in Lancashire is closed southbound from junction 8 at Chorley to 6 at Horwich after an accident. The M40 in Warwickshire is partly blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 13 and 12 from Bishop's Tatchbrook to Gaydon, causing queues. The A1M in Hertfordshire is partly blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 7 and 6 from Stevenage to Welling Garden City, causing delays. The M20 in Kent is blocked each way at junction 1 for the M25 after an accident, with long delays towards there. In Devon, the A30 is closed eastbound from Widden down to Cheriton Bishop after an accident, and in Cornwall, the A38 is closed each way between the A30 at Cumminor Cross and Dobwalls because of flooding and mud on the road.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We love.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. A swift meeting. The scandal. The Prime Minister just can't shake off.
It's now revealed that he had a 10-minute meeting with Taylor Swift when he attended her concert in London.
Now, that was following the approval of a VIP police escort organised by his former Chief of Staff, Sue Gray.
Meanwhile, the Chancellor has told Cabinet Ministers that plans to fill the £22 billion black hole in the finances will be enough only to keep public services standing still.
It comes as she's accused of hypocrisy after it's emerged she criticised Rishi Sunak on national insurance increases. This was in 2022. She called it the worst possible tax rise.
Assisted dying is set to return to Parliament as a new bill is formally introduced in the House of Commons.
Staggering new figures show 20% of Welsh children are illiterate even when they reach secondary school.
And a new survey finds that the majority of parents believe fines for unauthorised absences would not deter them from taking their children out of a school for holiday. So we're asking, should you be fined for kids missing term time?
And sport this morning, Thomas Tuchel will be unveiled as the new England manager this afternoon. Northern Ireland destroy Bulgaria, and is Sir Alex Ferguson being disrespected by Manchester United? Well, Eric Cantona seems to think so.
It's a warm Wednesday for all, a wet day for some though. Find out whether you'll be soggy or dry with a full forecast coming up later.
Hello there, just after 8 o'clock, a very good morning to you. Thank you for your company on this Wednesday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And on this Wednesday morning, I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Here's something quite interesting here. At school, it should be compulsory that male and female pupils in high school have cookery lessons from year one, says Charlie. And I have to say, Charlie, I agree with you because I feel useless on that front and all the things I learnt at school and whatever, nothing practical. Nothing practical. I would have loved to have done something like that.
Did you not do woodwork?
No.
We made letter openers out of wood, useless.
Yeah, but he was super bright, so he got sent to the impractical
Oh, did he?
school.
Did you not do metalwork? Did you do metalwork,
no,
woodwork?
Didn't do that. It was just scholarly learning.
Oh, is that what it was?
Greek mythology.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, he's totally impractical.
You want to get me that new Stephen Fry book?
Yeah, you'd be fine, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that'd be quite good.
You're great with the Odysseus fort, but you can't fry an egg. Is that right? OK, fine.
Basically, but you're a good cook.
I'm a terrible cook. I'd love to be able to do it.
But would you not prefer to do that than to make something in woodwork?
I would have preferred to do that, but I was terrible at that as well. I was terrible at all those things.
So do your kids get taught any sort of
my
food?
kids do cooking at school all the time, both of them.
Do they?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, they make bread, they make crumbles, they make curries, they make everything.
And they're at what I'm trying to say, a more academic...
One's at a little village state primary school, and they do cooking all the time.
Oh, well, we never had that at all. But that's interesting. I think that's very, very good.
Yeah.
What else should we have been taught at school that we were never taught?
Where to start?
What else?
Where to begin? Where to begin? But that's it. But
I'd like to have learnt about bookmaking.
What do you mean? What? As in, what a bookmaker? What a betting?
Know how to lay a bet.
Yeah.
Oh, amen.
Yeah.
Why?
What on earth?
Well, because when I go when betting happens, I haven't a clue.
Yes, but Eamonn,
it's 5 to 4
you know that
on.
people, it's like an addictive thing, and people lose, everything they have.
They do, and I'm never tempted.
Yeah, good.
Well, it's a fool's way,
Imagine
Eamonn.
if you knew how, then you could be in
Listen,
trouble.
if you ever want a bet put on, that's one of the reasons I'm here to do that for you. So you don't need to worry about that.
You could do that for me.
Oh, I could do that for you.
That was like at school. We did have a guy who was like the bookie at school. And
you had a bookie at school?
Well, he was the unofficial bookie. He would do...
Really?
He would do things.
What, on the horses?
Yeah, he would go down to the bookmakers down at Carlisle.
How would he get away with that then? Did he look old?
Yeah, he looked...
Is he one of the teachers?
No.
Oh, OK, fine.
Anyway, more on that to come.
Yeah, we're going to turn our attention to all things politics now, and we are joined by the Liberal Democrat Chief Whip, Wendy Chamberlain, to begin this hour. Good morning to you, Wendy. If you don't mind, I'd like to start with the breaking news in the last hour in relation to inflation figures. This shock drop below the target of 2% to 1.7%. The government have every right to be very pleased, and this follows closely in the wake of this hugely successful investment fund. Are things on the up, do you think?
Good morning. It's good to be here. Yes, obviously, the inflation fall is good news. But I think what's really important to remember with inflation is it just means that prices are still rising, but more slowly. And when we've seen such high levels of inflation in recent years, particularly on those day-to-day items that people buy every day, butter, cheese, all those kinds of things, clearly it's good news. but we need to see more progress. And in terms of inflation going forward, obviously we've seen an increase to the energy price cap as well as the removal of the winter fuel allowance. So it's still to be seen whether this fall in inflation can be sustained.
You are most concerned about doctors' appointments and NHS treatment and how it impacts on the workplace and day-to-day life, and in ways where, just some people get on with life and some people realise they can't and they're held back by this. Explain to us the whole dilemma that you've got here.
Yeah, so, Eamonn, what you're referring to is we've got our first opposition day in Parliament for 15 years where the Liberal Democrats have the opportunity to take control of the parliamentary agenda, and that's because we returned 72 MPs at the general election. And we campaigned, Eamonn, on NHS, social care, carers, sewage, cost of living, and we're taking the opportunity to debate those issues in Parliament today. And in relation to that, we've done polling that suggests that over a quarter of working UK adults have been unable to access an NHS appointment when they need them. So we're calling for the things we called for in our manifesto, guaranteed access to GP, which means training and delivering more GPs and ensuring that we can actually deliver a stronger economy. The government says that they want to ensure that. If our NHS isn't working how it should, then it's very difficult to see how that can be sustained.
And what do the Liberal Democrats make of this kind of very unusual step being announced by Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, yesterday, in issuing these so-called fat jabs for obese people in order to try and boost the economy? Do you think that that's something that will be good for the NHS, good for the economy, good for obese people?
Well, I think we've got to look at a range of options to tackle the obesity crisis. Obviously, I would like to see people taking healthier choices in terms of eating and general lifestyle. But for those people where it is a challenge, I think we should be considering a range of options, and potentially injections are part of that. We know how much obesity costs the NHS.
Well, we use those terms, the NHS and cost, all in the same sentence all the time. And, Wendy, however admirable what you're looking for is, I would just despair. I would just look and say, you haven't got a chance. You haven't got a chance of changing things.
Well, we elected 72 Liberal Democrat MPs in July on those things. So what I would say, Eamonn, is these are clearly the issues that people care about. And the reality is the NHS, fixing social care, supporting unpaid carers, those are non-political issues in some respects, as in whichever government is in power needs to tackle those issues. No. And what we've said since the election is we want to be a constructive opposition, and if the government want to take up some of our proposals, we'd welcome that.
Yeah, totally get what you're saying. Just explain to people who are saying, well, look, if I'm sick, I just soldier on. Why do some people come off the rails? I mean, I speak as a sick person, if that's the way to describe it myself, that mobility is a problem for me at the minute. And you don't realise how this is going to impact on you until it actually happens. It's the surprise element. Now, I'm blessed that GB News, I can still carry out my job here because I sit behind a desk here. But how does it impact? How does being ill stop certain people from working?
Yeah, and Eamonn, it's very good of you to talk about your own practical experiences. And I think sometimes when we talk about disabled people, we forget that the vast majority of people who have disabilities have acquired them over the course of their life rather than being born with them. And what we often see when people have soldiered on, that we then see additional issues. And that's why it's so important that we fix primary care so that people can access a GP, get the support and potentially prevent developing further conditions.
Can I ask you about the highly controversial assisted dying bill that is being introduced today and will be debated and then voted on after 6 weeks in Parliament? We had a very compelling interview with Rebecca Wilcox in the last hour. She's the daughter of Dame Esther Ranson, and she made the case that absolutely, we would treat animals with more dignity, and that this is a real opportunity to treat people with the dignity they deserve. And yet we're hearing from charities today that there are arguments that we need to improve palliative care, end-of-life care, before we even have this debate. And even the Archbishop of Canterbury weighing in, saying that he thinks the right to die could become a duty to die. It's a free vote. How do you think that you will vote in this?
So the first thing I would say in terms of assisted dying or choice at the end of life is, for me as a Scottish MP, the legislation that will most directly impact my constituents is that is going through Holyrood on a bill tabled by my Liberal Democrat colleague MSP Liam MacArthur. But yeah, I'll be taking a view in relation to that legislation. I don't think anybody can hear the testimonies of people like Tanni Thompson or Liz Carr talking about the concerns of disabled people, which are reflected by the charities that you referred to, and not think about the implications for legislation. I think it's very easy to talk about whether people are supportive or not in principle, but what I would say is I would want to see the detail of any bill, because even though potentially I am generally overall supportive of the right to choice at the end of life, I'd want to see and ensure that the safeguards are there so we don't see the slippery slope that the Archbishop of Canterbury referred to.
Now, as we say goodbye to you at the end of the programme, I'm going to say something to you which, you know, I like to pay people compliments if it genuinely shines through.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to Wendy Chamberlain, I'm looking at it there, and I have to say, Wendy, you have the most beautiful speaking voice. It's absolutely...
I have to agree, yeah.
Where in Scotland is that from?
So I'm from Greenock on the west coast originally, but obviously I represent North East Fife and St Andrews and have spent a number of years on the east coast. But my drama teacher from school will be very proud to hear you say that.
Oh, I'm really pleased about that, because you see, I'm a great advocate of regional accents, and you know, whether I don't care if you're from Wolverhampton, you're from Bristol, you're from Plymouth, wherever you're from Belfast. I think it's wonderful to have that variety, and it's just lovely to hear it so beautifully spoken.
Yeah, I agree.
So
lovely
thank you very
voice.
much indeed. Lovely talking to you today. Lovely listening to you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Just read the phone.
Thank you very much.
Couldn't she?
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Wendy. Appreciate it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I do love a Scottish accent in particular as well. That's a spot for Scotland. But let's not forget the Welsh. Welsh Conservatives today in the Senate will call for the government to enforce a phonics method for teaching reading in schools.
Well, do they not?
Apparently not.
Everybody seems to do that. Well, it's been revealed that 20% of Welsh children are classed as illiterate, and that is when they start secondary school. So they've gone through primary school, they're still illiterate by the time they get to secondary school. Yeah. And to talk more about this, Welsh Shadow Minister for Education, Tom Gifford, MS. Tom, this is really scary, mate.
Yeah, good morning, Eamonn. Yes, it is. You're right. 20% of young people leaving school, primary school, going into secondary school, not being able to read is a national scandal, I think, here in Wales. And the reason for that is because in Wales, too many schools teach a method called queuing to teach people to read, which is essentially have a look at the pictures and sort of, use them as prompts to guess what the word is. Now, the international way we know that works is phonics, as you've already described, which for those that don't know is kind of, you see the letters on the page and you see a cut and an at sound and it makes the word cat, for example. And that's not being taught in too many Welsh schools. And as a result, we've got the worst reading outcomes anywhere in the United Kingdom here in Wales. So that's something we're looking to change today by changing the guidance offered to schools so that queuing is banned, as it is in England, and phonics is what is promoted.
Gosh, and I suppose, to make this party political, you would argue, would you, that this is a failing of the Labour government?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, queuing was something that was looked at by a parliamentary inquiry in the UK in 2005 and then banned in England. So, the Welsh government have known about this for nearly 20 years as a result of the actions taken in England. I think sometimes the Welsh government is very guilty of trying to do its own thing in its own way, even if the outcomes are worse. It's this ideology over evidence. And unfortunately, the people that have suffered as a consequence of that are young people looking to achieve, their potential in Welsh schools. And if 20% of them are leaving schools unable to read, that is not allowing them to reach their full potential. So that's why we brought this motion forward to the Senate today. And that's what I'm hoping we can achieve, is that permanent change for our young people.
Yeah, and I suppose, will they ever catch up, or will that just be something that they struggle with for the rest of their lives?
Those figures are just unbelievable.
I mean, staggering, yeah.
You talk about 1 in 5 children that are secondary school are what is termed functionally illiterate. So what does that mean, and in what way would that hold them back?
Well, it stands to reason that it's not just, if you can't read, it's not just your reading and your English that suffers, right? It's every other subject that you then go on to pursue. PISA, who are the kind of international watchdog, if you like, for schooling systems around the world, shows that Wales is not only the worst in the United Kingdom at reading, but also at things like science and maths as well. And I think it's a huge part of the reason why, because ultimately, if you're falling behind on your reading, you're going to struggle in things like history, geography, maths and science.
But just tell me this, because you're talking about English and the implications of not being able to read it. Welsh language is a huge thing, of course, in Wales, a proud matter for the Welsh. Many people, I was hearing somebody give the example that they got to 12 before they learnt English even in Wales. Is that a factor in all of this, do you think?
You mean it's getting in the way?
Perhaps.
No, I don't think so. I'm someone who speaks Welsh, and there's lots of societies around the world that teach bilingually as you progress, through the education system. I think that's really important. I think it's important that we've got that preservation of the Welsh language in our Welsh schools. There's no international example where countries that are learning bilingually, if you like, in two different languages are held back in any way. If anything, actually, it boosts educational attainment. The problem in Wales is the way we're teaching reading and this pursuit, if you like, by the Welsh Labour government of their kind of ideology over the evidence in terms of what we know that works. So that's what we're bringing forward today, is a plan that is internationally proven. We know it works, and that's what we want to see in Welsh schools.
Tom, in Northern Ireland, and I'm looking at Wales being in a similar position, you're probably like us, where we educate a whole populace for export. I mean, basically, they're not the jobs in Northern Ireland, they're probably not the jobs in Wales and whatever in general. So you're educating people so that they can work elsewhere in the world. And that's a very sad thing. It's a very, very awful thing to happen. But I can honestly tell you, my friend, we have a really excellent education system, which cost, again, is coming in to tackle, and you will have to face this as well, in that a lot of civil servants and ministers are saying, well, there's no point educating these kids because we're not keeping them. They're not staying here. So what are we doing that for? It's costing us an awful lot of money. What is the way to fix this? I mean, just listening to you, the sort of teacher I was taught with primary, I went to a very, very ordinary primary school, absolutely proud to have done so, immensely fantastic. I went to a very good grammar school after that. I don't know how I passed the 11+. I didn't come from an academic family. There were no books in our house. And yet there I was able to compete with all of that. What is the way to tackle this?
Well, you're right in terms of people leaving Wales, and that is a crying shame. And there's wider questions, I think, about our economy here in Wales and whether we can retain the brightest and the best, if you like, to bring up families and pursue their careers here in Wales. One other shocking statistic is in last year's university applications, we found that only 33% were applying to go to uni. That compares to 41% in England. So this reading problem, in my view, is having huge implications, if you like, down the track in terms of the number of people then applying to go on to university and do all they can to achieve. Look, if we want more people to stay in Wales, we've got to boost our economy more widely here. For too long, not only has our education been the worst in the United Kingdom, but actually our economy is the weakest in out of the UK nation. So, this is something we really, really need to tackle. Unfortunately, this is the record of 25 years of Labour in Wales.
All right, Tom Gifford, thanks very much indeed. We should point out that the Welsh Government had this to say in relation to all of this. They said phonics is central to teaching in Wales. We expect to see it in all schools. We have said that we'll be making our expectations about phonics clearer and how this should be complemented by wider strategies to build learners' reading skills, taking into account the needs of individual children.
Whatever all that meant.
I should point out, just in the name of equality, I do love the Welsh accent as well. He had a lovely lilt to his voice as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All nice to have.
Gorgeous.
Alex Deakin, what accent does he have? Let's find out.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For some, a real soaker today, but for parts of eastern England, it'll be mostly dry and really quite warm here. In fact, warm air has been wafting north for the past 24 hours, producing some heavy pulses of rain overnight. Met Office yellow warning in place. That heavy rain tracking into parts of Scotland through the day, and then further pulses of heavy rain for Wales and southwest England. Some drier interludes likely across Northern Ireland, and as I mentioned at the start, much of eastern England will stay dry. Parts of East Anglia and the southeast should see some sunshine, which will lift the temperatures up to 20, maybe 21 degrees. Even where it's raining, really quite mild, but it's quite humid, it's quite dank, it's quite misty and murky, and further pulses of rain likely to spread up from France and over the Channel through the evening and overnight. So again, pretty wet through this evening. The evening rush hour on the M4, the M5, not very clever. Parts of Northern Ireland, again, not wet all day. There'll be some drier spells here, but more showers also coming up from the south. Turning a bit dry this evening across parts of Scotland, but again, staying pretty grey, pretty murky. A lot of mist and low cloud on some of the higher routes, and further pulses of rain then come across northern England into southern Scotland during this evening. And then it starts to turn wetter too over eastern England overnight, so some heavy bursts of rain coming in here. Then turning a little drier and a little clearer for Wales and southwest England. Another very warm night with many places staying in double digits and a few likely to stay in the teens. So yes, still pretty warm on Thursday. Turning a little fresher, drier day, certainly for Wales and southwest England. Some good spells of sunshine. We'll steadily see the rain clearing away from East Anglia and the southeast, taking a little longer to clear from northeast Scotland. A few showers later for Wales and the southwest and Northern Ireland too. But many places looking fine and sunny tomorrow. And although not as warm and humid as today, still temperatures above average.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed boiler repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Lovely northern accent we established
Yeah,
there.
okay,
Yeah, so we're
right.
getting them all covered this morning. We've had Ian Paisley Jr., you. We've had the Lib Dems from
You have an
Scotland,
accent.
me with my boring accent. We've had the Welsh on as well, so we've got them all covered, and the Northerners.
OK, we're now going to give you a chance to win £36,000 cash. It is the Great British Giveaway competition. Just 2 weeks remaining.
There's only 2 weeks on demand. Good luck.
Right, still to come, should parents be fined for taking their children out of school during term time?
Yes.
Eamonn, got thoughts on this?
Yes. Look, we just did a whole debate there in Wales about how 20% of kids are illiterate, you know, by the time they get to secondary school. I wonder how much of that's got to do with going out and missing school. Miss school, pay the penalty. Think about it. Back after this.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
True crime is everywhere.
Yeah, next weekend, CrimeCon UK takes place in London. And joining us now to tell us more about that event and the true crime phenomena is former detective Stephen. How do you pronounce your surname? Keogh. Sorry, Stephen.
That's all right.
I should have checked you before.
No worries.
And Nancy, and again, Nancy, what's your surname?
Bourne.
Thank you. I'm showing my ignorance there, but thank you both for joining us. So, Stephen, you're a former top cop. Hope you don't mind me describing you as that. At CrimeCon and other events like that, do you get into sort of the semantics of the investigations and, you know, how... For example, how I was watching something the other night where somebody was unfortunately murdered, but you saw the crime scene investigators trying to work out from which side the person was attacked from. Did the knife come from the left-hand side or the right-hand side? Is it all that kind of stuff?
So for me, everything I've done since I've left the police is about sharing that knowledge of investigations, because if you watch TV, they get it wrong a lot. So what we try and do, I'm not the only police officer there, there's experts, so forensic scientists, psychologists, all from that investigative world, just trying to get across, well, actually, this is how it's really done. This is what we do, not what you're going to see on telly. And I think that's really important. So for me personally, coming along to CrimeCon, I just look at the list of people that are there, honestly, and I'm proud to be associated with them. There are some fascinating people there. People who've really fought for justice for their children. People who are campaigning for victims, for survivors. So it's an event that when you look at the name, you might think, oh, they're just going to sit there talking about serial killers and what they got up to. Couldn't be further from the truth. It's really about what goes on, how it impacts the victims, how the investigations are carried out. It's educational as much as anything.
GB News, The People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top two for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tomorrow as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tomorrow, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No, we're looking at a survey, and this survey's found that a majority of parents are happy to pay the fines to take their children out of school for a holiday.
Yeah, because the fine is usually, what, 80 quid or something, but the saving that you can make on a flight, if you take them out a week before the end of term, where they're just watching films and eating sweets anyway, can be thousands. Meanwhile, figures by the Parent Kind charity reveal half of parents are actually opposed to a potential policy that'll see parents fined if their child misses school for 5 days without permission.
So, should you as a parent be fined for taking your children on holiday if it is during term time? Let's discuss this now.
Yes, we are joined by the psychologist Joe Hemmings and the commentator Danielle Mason. Let's start with you, Joe. You think that there should be these sorts of fines, these punitive measures for these naughty parents who are harming their children's education?
Morning, Isabel, and morning, Eamonn. Yes, I do. Because I think it's disrespectful to teachers. I think it's disruptive for children. They have to then play catch up. I mean, it sends a very poor message out to your child, which is it's okay just to leave school in the middle of term time and go away. I mean, is this a message they're going to continue through life? Well, I'm at work, but I'm not going to bother checking to see whether I can book my holiday. I'm just going to take it when I want to because it's cheaper. And if the fines aren't putting parents off, then put the fines up. I think one day, maybe at the beginning or end of term, as overlap is not terrible, but taking your child away in the middle of term time just is appallingly disruptive and really disrespectful to teachers.
If they put the fines up, it still wouldn't stop people. They would just fib. They would pretend that they had a tummy bug or something and they just wouldn't tell the truth. And then what message would that send the kids? Lie to your school, miss class. Why not just be honest and say, this is a miserable world we're all living in. Nobody can afford the flights that we're being asked to pay or the hotels that we're being asked to pay during term time. Let kids go out when the parents think it's a good time for them.
Because it's just massively disruptive to education. It just shouldn't happen. And either put the fines up, make it prosecution, get to the point where there's such a deterrent that they won't think, oh, yeah, well, I'm saving that money anyway on a holiday. As I say, one day either side, fine, but, absolutely not. Your child's education is the most important thing, the most important blessing you can give to your child. Don't disrupt it by taking them on holiday in the middle of a term.
Wise words, Joe, wise words. Danielle, though, sometimes there are reasons why people do this, their situation, and you have particular reasons for wishing it to be.
So for me,
I think it's very hypocritical for the education system to throw these fines out there, because the education system is not in great nick at the moment. There's children that are not getting school places that should be getting school places, children getting turned away, children that have got extra special needs getting sent home from the school where they can't get the support in school. And then you've got the cheek of the education system to turn round and fine parents for doing exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, but you're making it worse. So you then sort of saying, right, this is not working, but I'm going to then really mess it up. And it's the idea that the parent knows better than the authority, the school, as to how to educate children, how to go about this routine, this system. And I hate to tell you, Danielle, they don't.
Well, for me, I personally think that the government need to be giving school places to every child before they've got the cheek to go and find a parent. That's just my take on it.
Your experience was that your kids couldn't get placed, and so you feel quite negative towards the
I do feel quite negative, because I have had a bad experience. But when I was at school, the education system was a good system, and I would probably have agreed with the fines then. But now we're in such a bad place with the education that British children cannot always get a place in school. They're just being sent home, left at home. And a lot of parents will agree with me that are going through this at the moment. For the school to turn round and then fine parents because that doesn't suit them, but they're OK to do it the other way round, I think it's very hypocritical. But also, on the other hand, if you are taking your kids out of school, then you can liaise with the teacher, and you can work away to keep them caught up with it, which is better one-to-one. And also, I think rather than fining parents, maybe they need to start coming down on these holiday companies that are taking the mick with things like this.
That's a good point. That's an interesting point. Guys, we'd love to go on and talk about this, but the class bell has rung and it's time to go home. Thank you both very much indeed, Joe and Danielle. We'll take the break. We've got sport coming your way. We've got the newspaper review after that. Please do stay with us on this Wednesday morning.
The latest GB News travel.
On the M2 in Antrim, the outside lane is blocked towards Belfast by an accident between junctions 4 and 2 from Newton Abbey to Greencastle, causing queues. The M61 in Lancashire is closed southbound between junctions 8 and 6 from Chorley to Horwich after an accident. The M20 in Kent is closed eastbound from junction 1 for the M25 to 3 for the M26 after an accident, with queues back along the A20 for a mile and along the clockwise M25 towards there. On the M2 in Kent, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed eastbound after an accident between junctions 2 and 3 near Rochester, causing queues. In Devon, the A30 is closed eastbound from Whiddon Down to Cheriton Bishop after an accident late last night. And in Cornwall, the A38 is closed in both directions between the 12 Woods roundabout at Dobwalls and the A30 at Carmino Cross because of flooding and mud.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tomorrow as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tomorrow, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here's Paul and so much sport to digest. What do you think the reaction, the feeling is towards Thomas Tuchel if he is appointed England manager?
He will be, so he'll be appointed this afternoon. I think generally OK. Most of the professionals that I've spoken about or spoken to about this seem very positive about it. When it first broke, I'm thinking, is he going to be the guy? Is this the one that's going to turn England around? You've always said good things about him, and I know you were thinking, well, maybe in Manchester United he could do a good job, but maybe that's why England have pounced now. And also there was the talk, wasn't there, with Lee Carsley saying, well, England need a very good manager, someone that's won, a real pro, and someone that's won lots of trophies. I think he knew. In fact, he would definitely have known about this. So he was always very careful about what he was saying about moving on. So it won't be until January, though. So I think there'll still be a couple more games that Carsley will look after, but Tuchel will take over.
I love how the papers have found the most Germanic pictures of him possible, with him in lederhosen.
Yes.
Just, you know, really driving
Looking
home the point that there's going to be a German in charge of the English.
Well, obviously, there's that rivalry that we've had over the years that goes back to '66 and all the great games we played against Germany, and thinking, how could we have a German? But then again, is that going to be the answer? But nobody would have complained if Jurgen Klopp had taken over.
True.
Everybody would be celebrating, and it's the same as Pep Guardiola. Nobody would have complained if a Spaniard had taken over. So I think any talk about the fact that he's foreign, it's a shame. It would be nice if it's an English manager, but I think it's going to be OK.
OK.
I think it will work for Harry Kane. I think it'll work for the players. He's a good manager, and I think we'll be all right.
What about Alex Ferguson? He was costing United too much in his ambassador role.
Yeah. Ambassador, legend, of course. How many titles? 13, 12, Eamonn?
I just lost
count of 5 or 6.
Titles.
Everything that he's won at Manchester United, and
is he very short, or is Mr. Ineos extremely tall?
He's tall. He's tall.
Right, okay.
He's 7'3".
Every time I see that picture, I'm like,
see, there we are.
Really
there's Steve McLaren standing next to him, so they look in the general size there. But Sir Alex is an ambassador at Manchester United. The big deal is that he's costing £2 million a year. Now, Eric Cantona, the legend, another legend, is very unhappy.
Are you going to read out the full quote?
We have the quote. If we can see that, I think we can probably see this, what he put on Instagram. Anything he wants, Sir Alex Ferguson should be able to do anything he wants at the club until the day he dies. Such a lack of respect. It is totally scandalous. Sir Alex Ferguson will be my boss forever. I throw them all in a big bag of... That's what Eric Cantona says.
OK. Well, with that smell, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Paul. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm off to my bag.
You're what?
I'm off to my bag of...
Your bag of...
Yeah.
Okay.
Good stuff.
We've got the papers right after the break. So we've got Ian Paisley Jr. and Susie Stride, and they're very good after this.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, Italian wine in Britain is worth a whopping £891 million and can be described as a Prosecco phenomenon, apparently. So joining us now to tell us more about why these Italian bubbles are so popular is Ed Smith, the founder of The Emissary, a British-based Prosecco brand. Good morning, Ed.
Morning, guys.
Thank you for coming in, and you've done just as we asked. You come laden with booze and bottles and glasses.
Exactly.
So the definition of Prosecco, Tatiana, you were saying earlier, is sparkling wine that's been made in certain areas of Italy. Which areas?
Exactly. So the Prosecco region is northeast Italy. It's about sort of an hour north of Venice. Foothills of Dolomite Mountains. Very, very beautiful part of Italy. Veneto, exactly. Well done.
Show off.
I'm half Italian, so...
well, there we go. OK, you should be teaching me.
No, that's it.
So, yeah, so like Champagne, that has to come from the Champagne region in France. Prosecco has to come from the Prosecco region in Italy. And it's different to Champagne and other sparkling wines, like English sparkling wine, in that geography, like we just mentioned, has to come from that region in Italy. The grapes that are used are different. So Prosecco has to be at least 85% Glera, which are the native grapes of the region. And it's most importantly the method. So Champagne and English sparkling wines use the traditional method, where second fermentation, which produces the bubbles, happens in the bottle. Whereas Prosecco uses what's called the Charmat method. So the second fermentation happens in steel vats. It's a much quicker process, and that's why Prosecco is a bit more affordable.
So the Emissory is a British-based Prosecco brand.
Yeah.
So is it made in the UK?
No, made in Italy.
Yeah, that's why you can call it Prosecco.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can't call it Prosecco unless it's made in those two regions.
Great. So can we get stuck into some of these? That's the most important
Absolutely.
thing of this morning.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So we'll say hello, good morning, and welcome to Ian Paisley Jr. and Susie Stride, who are reviewing our papers today. And I'm being quite particular about this, Ian, because if I didn't say hello to you, it could end up being against the law, according to the Daily Mail.
Isabel, how are you?
Very good, thank you. I don't want any tribunals on my watch.
Just ignore them, don't I? I know, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, it sounds like this person was bullying.
Yeah.
Like deliberately ignoring in a sort of nasty, facetious way. And
well, look, let me tell you,
to it.
when I first came to London in 1986, you would walk around BBC Television Centre, which is circular, right? And there's all these fire doors every bit. And I would hold the door open for people and I'd say, hello, morning, what about you? Yeah. And they would look at me like as if, I don't know him.
Yeah.
What's he just spoken to me for? And they would drop their head.
Do you talk to people in the tube? I deliberately, with a Northern Irish accent, put on very strong. You all right? How's it going?
I think it's
you getting off here?
I think it's
I deliberately do that.
We're unfriendly. The other day, I nearly got my handbag stuck in the tube doors, and someone commented, "Oh, don't get your lovely bag stuck in the doors." And then we had a giggle.
Yeah.
I think we're quite friendly.
I think we are friendly.
Londoners.
Yeah, we are.
People actually want to talk. People want to talk.
But there is a reluctance to talk. I'm telling you fact. I'm not going to take any argument on it. I can observe
survey of one.
30 years. No, for 30 years, and the general populace in London are not interested in being friendly.
Especially, I think probably I'd be different towards a man I didn't know, especially if he was older. I'd just be automatically suspicious.
Different areas. The East End, I'm an East Ender. The East End's very friendly. I think Geordies, you go up to the north, I think it's different parts. Like you say, regional accents.
There's a type of person without, that I could point out to you and say, they'll not speak to you, they'll not speak to you. It's not part of their culture. With us, push them. It is part of our culture to talk to people even when...
That's because we're nosy.
Yeah.
It's not to do that we're friendly, we're just really nosy.
I find it infuriating trying to go anywhere with Eamonn because he literally talks to everybody. And I'm like, for goodness sake, you're here with me, talk to me. Oh, hello, what's your name? Where are you from? Oh, I've been there. What's the weather like there? How's your mother? How's your
People
uncle?
love that, Isabel.
I just lose my mind.
People really love that.
Would you like a photograph?
That's why it's a household legend.
I know, but I've got no time for it.
It's good.
You know what I mean?
Yes, that's why you're so unfriendly. You see,
I'm really not.
But I'm just trying to say that maybe where you're from, you're talking about the East End, maybe it's part of what you are. I am what my father was, what my brothers are, and that's just the way you are.
Well, you're not a carpet fitter.
I have no skills at all, none whatsoever. But,
I can confirm.
So that's it. So why not saying hello could be against the law? And why are they saying this is against the law? That's you I'm talking to.
Oh, right, OK. Why is it against the law? Well, they say because it leads into this thing about being bullying and all the rest. Well, I don't get that. Look, you can't force people to be nice. But hopefully the nice people will rise to the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way they put it.
Kill it with kindness, I say.
Yeah.
I just don't. I really don't get why they're putting time. It's one of these kind of nonsense stories.
Susie, let's talk about the sort of. Well, there's a big argument about the House of Lords, and Labour are desperate to get rid of these hereditary peers, and people have turned around and said, hang on a minute, you've packed out your party, particularly the Cabinet, with a bunch of what are termed Nepo babies. And actually, look at the list here. Stephen Kinnock, Liam Conlon, Lisa Nandy and Hilary Benn, they've all got Labour Party lineage. Not to forget Hamish Falconer, who had his car crash interview with us on the channel last week when he couldn't string a sentence together. Of course, the son of the famous Lord Falconer, who was Blair's Attorney General. It's a bit hypocritical, isn't
I think there's two things on it. First of all, I'm a big fan of Hamish Falconer. I think he's a force to be reckoned with. And, maybe in that moment, for whatever reason, he didn't perform so well. But, he's got a great track record. He was a negotiator.
He was only just elected in July and suddenly he's in the Cabinet. Nothing to do with his famous
his
father.
Journey leading up to that, like helping with the evacuation of Afghanistan. I mean, I've known him for many years. Lovely, good character, etc. So there's two arguments here. First of all, it's about the House of Lords. Ultimately, you cannot have people privileged by birth because of who Daddy is. They get a position in the House of Lords. I'm sure they're lovely people, but I think ultimately, in this day and age, that's got to go. For me, there's no debate about that.
But you can pack it full of cronies.
And then the second thing you've got here is, you read that list. I mean, I know a lot of these guys, and they're good people. Hilary Benn and others. These are good people, but it doesn't sit well. And I think, we were just talking about this. I mean, ultimately, it's very normal, isn't it? Like, if your dad's a doctor, you may be more likely to become a doctor. If your mum's a head teacher, you may be feel more inspired to go into the teaching profession.
Well, let's ask Ian Paisley Jr., who's probably been described as... Have you been described as a Nepo baby?
Whose mother and father
the ultimate Nepo baby.
Yeah. There's a much deeper issue here.
Yeah.
The British Constitution, if you start saying, look, hereditary peerage must be cast aside, hereditary monarchy is next.
Is it? No, because nobody since the time of Queen Anne in the royal family has had any involvement in the law, whereas members of the House of Lords have a huge and important role in, studying, analysing, debating legislation.
The whole constitution really becomes up for grabs. You get rid of the hereditaries, get rid of the bishops, you then impact the ethos of the state. All of that there becomes impacted by this. So I just say, blow the whistle on this, be very, very cautious. And remember, there's only, about 100 hereditary peers in the House of Lords. There's thousands of them out there. They elect. The most democratic aspect, perversely, of the House of Lords is that the only members who are elected to the House of Lords are the hereditaries. The rest are the appointees, and you've used the word cronies. Are they all cronies? Some of them are there by expertise. Some of them definitely
Well, definitely the 28-year-old that got in under Boris Johnson. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what she achieved. But let's just go back for a moment. I just don't think you can have in this day and age, because of your birth, you have a seat in the House of Lords. You just can't have that.
But you think the same about the monarchy, don't you?
Because of who Mummy and Daddy are.
But you think the same about the monarchy,
Susie. I don't want to live in a country like that.
But Susie, you think the same about the monarchy.
And I think it sends an important message. I just, going to, a primary school in Poplar, why is that Lord there? Because who their daddy was. Sorry, you just can't have... Yeah. And I think this is an important move.
But do you think the same was the monarchy?
It's a bigger question about the monarchy, and I think that is a bigger debate.
But you do think the same about the monarchy?
How I feel about the monarchy is this. Look, I met the Queen, wonderful person. I haven't met Prince William and Kate, but, you look at them, I've got a lot of respect for them. But I think, logically, privilege by blood doesn't sit anyone. But I'm not saying... But the thing is as, is being said here, they don't have a say over legislation.
This is the most successful constitutional monarchy ever.
Well, exactly. So
in hundreds of years, the most constitutional, successful unit.
Yeah.
And you start tampering with these little things that, yes, look irregular, and the whole thing starts to crumble. You need to just be very careful before you walk down this road.
If you were offered, and you may well have been offered, a seat in the Lords, would you take it?
Of course you would. You would, Eamonn.
I would.
You would. Isabel would.
Yeah, I'd love to be in the Lords. I would love to scrutinise legislation. I absolutely would love to be a baronet.
I say, too, the most impactful members of the House of Lords were those who were able to blow the whistle on the Commons on social policy and say, this just doesn't work. The Labour Party, the Tory Party, you're just not strong enough to stand up in this. And things would come back and they would be amended and changed because they're not pulled by a constituency. So
but
don't undermine
appointees based on skill set, experience, you know, years in a certain industry. That's great. That's what we're for. That is good, you know, for the greater good of the country. By birth, no. It's something
but
from
fine if you've donated loads of money and you've just got.
Well, exactly. I don't agree with that. With you, don't agree with it. I'm happy to challenge any party on that.
Whilst we've got you, I can't resist just asking what it's like. I love that. What it's like, you know, growing up with a very famous political father. I mean, is it hard to kind of distance yourself from
Dad was just Dad.
Or is that an honour, really?
No, Dad was just Dad, and I mean, he was a very affectionate, loving, kind father. If he wasn't, you know, I would have grown up, I think, very, very differently. But I was blessed to have really caring, loving parents, and I hope that I show that to my kids as a result.
But did you get a backlash because people just assumed you were a Paisley?
Yeah, people assumed that I went into politics because of my dad, you know, and all the rest of it. I'm the youngest of 5. My sister went into politics. She was a councillor for 12 years. The rest of my siblings didn't. Though the other one went into the other family business, which was the church. Yeah. You know, so like kids do follow good parents. Yeah. You know, I mean, I know lots of my friends are teachers or doctors, and their kids are the same.
And I don't think it's a bad thing, is it? Let's be honest. Like, you know, your dad was involved with the Northern Day Peace still. You know what I mean? What an incredible, like, heritage there. And I just think we have to be careful here. Because all of these things are very nuanced. And actually, we don't want to suddenly be like, oh, because you had a family member that actually served, it is a service in politics, that actually then, like, their son or daughter. Yeah, I think it's really important. It's really important. Because there's a level of calibre and skill that's going to come from that. And that over money any day.
The Conservative leadership, the big debate on GB News tomorrow between Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch. I'd like to ask both of you, what do you make of it? I mean, you don't think one's as bad as the other.
Do you know what I don't? Do you know what's really interesting? Like, for me, Kemi, any day over Jenrick, and interestingly linked to the issue we've just been speaking about, we can't forget, it was only... So I live on the Isle of Dogs, where you've got West Ferry Print Works, and it was all in the news whenever it was 5-6 years ago, and you know, Jenrick, you know, cozying up to Richard Desmond, you know, over... And that was a whole scandal when he resigned over it. I mean, like, for me, I'm just like, I think there is a character issue there when that kind of stuff goes on, and you know, just look back through the news and you'll see it. It's fact. And so for me, I mean, I'm not saying I'm a fan of Kemi.
No, but you're absolutely right. No one talks about that. No one talks about his murky resignation and all of that.
Talking about all this like scandal around the Labour Party and whatever her name is, Taylor Swift, and I'm like, well, what about Jenrick and that? Why is that not front page of some of these newspapers?
Kemi's right on the issue. The Tory party only has one chance at this. They've got to get it right. They're already on the basement. They can't go through the basement. They've got to start rebuilding. So what's the reset going to look like? Who can best take on Labour and who can rebuild that party? Otherwise, I think there will be a move to the reform movement. I mean, at the moment, I'm not sure, is reform a real revolution or is it a flash in the pan? And what the Tories do will determine what happens with reform. So this is a seismic moment for the Conservatives. I don't know who's going to win it, but I mean, I don't have a vote on it. None of us at this table have a vote on it, but it's very
Well, we would
interesting
just say the Tories are so ruthless, aren't they? Ultimately, look, if she doesn't perform, they will get rid of her. They're not like us, we just stick with it. I'm a big James Cleverly fan. Met James Cleverly, big fan of his.
He's an impressive man.
He's an impressive man, and I think it's very sad that he hasn't got through. So, but maybe he will in the next couple of years.
The greatest are always cast aside.
I know, I mean...
I mean, you can come here and join us.
You two don't go any further than this. We've got to say goodbye, Susie and Ian. Very enjoyable.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you very much indeed. Right, so we're going to bring you up to date now with the weather situation. Good morning, Alex Deacon.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For some, a real soaker today, but for parts of eastern England, it'll be mostly dry and really quite warm here. In fact, warm air has been wafting north for the past 24 hours, producing some heavy pulses of rain overnight. Met Office yellow warning in place. That heavy rain tracking into parts of Scotland through the day, and then further pulses of heavy rain for Wales and southwest England. Some drier interludes likely across Northern Ireland, and as I mentioned at the start, much of eastern England will stay dry. Parts of East Anglia, the southeast, should see some sunshine, which will lift the temperatures up to 20, maybe 21 degrees. Even where it's raining, really quite mild, but it's quite humid, it's quite dank, it's quite misty and murky, and further pulses of rain likely to spread up from France and over the Channel through the evening and overnight. So again, pretty wet through this evening. The evening rush hour on the M4, the M5, not very clever. Parts of Northern Ireland, again, not wet all day. There'll be some drier spells here, but more showers also coming up from the south. Turning a bit dry this evening across parts of Scotland, but again, staying pretty grey, pretty murky. A lot of mist and low cloud on some of the higher routes, and further pulses of rain then come across northern England into southern Scotland during this evening. And then it starts to turn wetter too over eastern England overnight, so some heavy bursts of rain coming in here. Then turning a little drier and a little clearer for Wales and southwest England. Another very warm night with many places staying in double digits and a few likely to stay in the teens. So yes, still pretty warm on Thursday, turning a little fresher, drier day, certainly for Wales and southwest England, some good spells of sunshine. We'll steadily see the rain clearing away from East Anglia in the southeast, taking a little longer to clear from northeast Scotland. A few showers later for Wales and the southwest and Northern Ireland too, but many places looking fine and sunny tomorrow, and although not as warm and humid as today, still temperatures above average.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M2 in Antrim, the outside lanes closed towards Belfast after an accident between junctions 4 and 2 from Newton Abbey to Greencastle, or queues from junction 5 at Temple Patrick. The M61 in Lancashire is closed southbound from junction 8 at Chorley to 6 at Horwich after an accident. On the M4 in Newport, the outside lanes closed westbound after an accident between junctions 24 and 25 from the Calder to Kaya Leon, taking roughly 20 minutes in the queues. The M20 in Kent is closed eastbound from junction 1 for the M25 to 3 for the M26 after an accident, with queues back along the A20 and clockwise M25. On the M2 in Kent, 3 out of 4 lanes are closed eastbound after an accident between junctions 2 and 3 near Rochester, with queues from junction 1 at Strood. In Devon, the A30 is closed eastbound from Widden down to Cheriton Bishop after an accident. In Cornwall, the A38 is closed each way between Bodmin and Dobwalls.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's only 2 weeks.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. A swift meeting. The scandal the Prime Minister can't seem to shake off.
What do you think? It's now revealed that he had a 10-minute meeting with Taylor Swift when he attended her concert in London.
This was following the approval of a VVIP police escort for the singer, organised by his former Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, on the same day.
Now, meanwhile, the Chancellor has told Cabinet Ministers that plans to fill the £22 billion black hole in finances will be enough only to keep public services standing still.
It comes as she's accused of hypocrisy after it's emerged she criticised Rishi Sunak on national insurance increases in 2022, calling it the worst possible tax rise.
Inflation has fallen to 1.7% in the year to September, the lowest rate in 3.5 years.
Assisted dying is set to return to Parliament as a new bill is formally introduced in the House of Commons.
It's a warm Wednesday for all, a wet day for some though. Find out whether you'll be soggy or dry with a full forecast coming up later.
Very good to see you this Wednesday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Assisted dying has got everybody talking, and we had Dame Esther Ranson's daughter on the programme this morning talking about Esther's situation. She's got stage 4 lung cancer, has Esther, and she's basically saying she wants the law changed. And I would say most of you have got in touch with us today, again, want the same. You want the right to be able to decide to end your life. But those who are not committed, it's a massive moral dilemma for you.
Yeah, and I think that sums it up. I don't think anybody really 100% knows how they feel. Even the politicians that we've spoken to this morning, all of them saying, not really sure. I think as well we're hearing the Prime Minister's shifting a bit on his own position. He was originally in favour of it, but he's said to be a bit more cautious. Irene has got in touch on Your Say, saying, what I worry about is, will we feel we could have had her loved ones for longer? Was it our fault that they wanted to go earlier? And we had that example, didn't we, from Nigel, I forget his surname, the Conservative politician we spoke to just after 7 o'clock, Huddleston. He had a constituency surgery where somebody came in, said they'd been to Dignitas with their loved one, where they'd legally been able to end their life, and were then racked with guilt, and it was unbearable suffering that they were left with. And so he was unsure on what he thought about it.
I lost my father suddenly. He died of a heart attack 33 years ago. And that is something I think about every day. And I miss him greatly. I wasn't able to say goodbye to him or anything like that. And that's a big loss, that sudden death thing. My mother died 2 years ago, coming up to 2 years ago now. And I have, how do I put this? I've never regretted her going. I love my mother incredibly well, but I hated seeing her suffering. And when I heard, I was able to say goodbye to her, everything was all above board like that. But just to know her suffering had ended, I think, what was there not to be thankful for? That was a great thing. And I think it's awful to watch someone over the course of a number of weeks, obviously in pain, obviously suffering, and saying, give her another injection, whatever. And that's my view.
Yeah,
my view
well,
is...
Christine said something similar. She said, dying with dementia is awful, it's no life. If my dad was capable of taking his own life, he would have done. It was a blessing when he actually died. Oh, gosh, I don't know. It's just a really difficult one. Let us know what you think this morning. This one from Michael says, I'm concerned about legally assisted dying because I don't trust governments. Just look at what's happening in Canada. 20% of deaths now are assisted, including young people with depression. The thin edge of the wedge argument is a real risk.
The other argument is Taylor Swift and this whole how everybody's getting there in a twist. I'm
sure there's a lyric in there if we were quick enough to think about it, but I can't.
She got this armed guard through London. You can argue, it was right, it was wrong, whatever it is. And then the Prime Minister had 10 minutes with her, with his wife.
On the same day. And we didn't know this. Has only come to light now. This all contributes to this kind of he's so terrified of being honest with the public the whole time.
But no one ever thinks that Taylor Swift may have wanted to meet the Prime Minister. I mean, it's a big thing if the head of a country wants to see you or whatever.
But we know that her mum, Taylor Swift's mum, kicked up a huge fuss and demanded this blue light service because of these threats that she'd experienced in Vienna, and with obviously all the links to the Southport attack as well. She kicked up a huge fuss, got what she wanted, something that Prince Harry, son of the King, is having to go to court to try and argue for because his own family, he thinks, are under threat when they're in this country. He's being denied this kind of VVIP escort. And they snap their fingers because they're wealthy, bringing lots into the economy, get what they want. Turns out, on the same day, the Prime Minister has a tête-à-tête with her. All a bit cosy.
Doesn't worry me. And what is it? It's a one-off. It's a one-off, but there you go. And, that's what we're going to talk about now. Let's go to Catherine Foster. Catherine is out and about in London, and we're also going to be talking about the assisted dying situation with her as that comes into play tonight. Good morning, Catherine. Fill us in.
Yes, good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. Well, I think let's start with assisted dying, as that's what you've just been talking about. People have very strong views on every side. And worth saying, this will be a free vote. At the end of November, the bill is being introduced to Parliament today. The Prime Minister made a promise to Esther Rantzen, who of course has got terminal lung cancer and has signed up for Dignitas. She's been passionately campaigning for the law to be changed, but there's many others, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, who worry that, as he says, the right to end your life could turn into a duty to do so. I had a closer look at this and also particularly what's gone awry in Canada. Let's take a look at that now.
I made a promise to Esther Rantzen before the election, provide time for a debate and a vote on assisted dying.
But the Prime Minister's promise to her means that today a bill will be introduced to Parliament which could legalise assisted dying for the terminally ill in England and Wales. Labour MP Kim Ledbetter private member's bill will be voted on by MPs at the end of November.
Current law is not fit for purpose, and this is not a law that would mean that everybody has to make that choice, but I think to give people that choice in some of the circumstances that we're hearing about today is really, really important.
Order, order.
MPs in Westminster last voted on this most contentious of issues in 2015.
The ayes to the right, 118. The noes to the left, 330.
Opinions are sharply divided. Former Conservative Minister Kit Malthouse supports the change.
A member of my extended family who died many years ago actually of multiple sclerosis in horrible circumstances, and more closely a death in my wife's family from breast cancer, both of which reinforced in me the idea that, you know, if anyone were to face those horrible circumstances, I'd at least like the choice.
But Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey is opposed.
But for me, having looked after my mother, who was terminally ill and died when I was next to her bedside when I was 15, and seen the pain she went through, one of the issues for me is improving palliative care, improving hospice care. It's just not good enough at the moment. And I think there's also the issue that affects me profoundly about elderly people, and a real worry that they will feel that if we go down this route, that they want to relieve a burden. They'll consider themselves a burden on their children and grandchildren.
And many worry about a slippery slope, such as has happened in Canada, where assisted dying for terminal conditions was legalised in 2016, then broadened to chronic conditions in 2021. Here's Alex Schadenberg, head of the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition.
It started with one military veteran who had PTSD contacting the support services for military veterans. And what happened is that they were told, have you considered medical aid in dying? Other cases popped up. So we learned that there was minimally about 10 of them. There might have been more, we don't know for sure, and there was at least 2 people who died by euthanasia who had PTSD. It's like the Heather Hancock situation. She's a woman who was born with disabilities, and now she's in the hospital having health problems, and the nurse says to her, do yourself a favor, ask for medical aid in dying. And she's like, but I'm not interested in medical aid in dying. And the nurse told her, well, you know, you're not living. You're just existing. You should never legalize euthanasia or assisted suicide. The problem is that you simply can't control it.
MPs have a huge decision to make. Catherine Forster, GB News.
So just over my shoulder, you can see the people in pink. They are from the campaign group Dignity in Dying. They are families and people who've been affected by relatives having horrible deaths, basically, who feel passionately that the law does need to be changed. Worth just saying that although this was roundly defeated back in 2015, of the MPs who voted against assisted dying then, 477 of those 650 have now left. There's hundreds of new MPs, particularly Labour, and the Prime Minister back in 2015 did support it, though at the moment the government is not taking a view. Worth also saying it has been legalised now in many, many countries.
OK, Catherine, thanks very much indeed.
A ship carrying the first group of migrants from Italy will arrive in Albania today. That marks the official start of a controversial plan to process thousands of asylum seekers in the Balkan nation.
The Italian naval vessel will transfer an initial group of 16 migrants as part of a deal to send up to 36,000 asylum seekers to the country every year. The 16 men were rescued from international waters on Sunday.
Let's get the views now of our Home and Security editor, Mark White, on this one. It's not so much the numbers to crow about here with this one, but what's different about this, Mark? Why is this groundbreaking?
Well, it's groundbreaking because it's the first time that an EU member nation has, if you like, outsourced a lot of its migrant processing to a non-EU country. Now, so breaking news, we can confirm that the Italian naval vessel that was carrying this first group of migrants has docked at the port of Shenzhen in Albania. Some 16 migrants on board to begin with, just a modest amount to start with. They were picked up on a small boat that had left Libya and was in the Mediterranean heading for the Italian island of Lampedusa. This 16 migrant batch to begin with consists of 10 Bangladeshis and 6 Egyptians. Now, the Italian government have said what they will do is send non-vulnerable adult males to this processing centres in Albania as part of this £560 million deal over 5 years. Now, it sounds a lot of money, but it's over 5 years. And of course, from Italy's point of view, it's the deterrent effect. They believe that there will be a significant deterrent effect delivered by not having people come to Italy, but heading off to Albania. And they believe that many of those who are in Albania will not be allowed to go to Italy because they won't qualify. What Italy is saying is the migrants that they are sending to Albania are those who are deemed to have come from safe countries. There are 21 countries that Italy deems as safe where migrants come from, Bangladesh and Egypt being 2 of them. And of course, I mean, Sir Keir Starmer may be thinking perhaps he was a little hasty in ditching our deterrent scheme that the Conservatives were working on, the Rwanda plan to send the first flights out in July. He scrapped that on his first day in office, calling it a gimmick. Now, this scheme does differ from the Albanian scheme in the sense, this Albanian scheme does differ from Rwanda in the sense that if someone is granted asylum, they can return to Italy to take up their asylum in that country. Under the Rwanda scheme, no one would be allowed to return if they were granted asylum. They would settle in the East African nation itself. But having said that, Sir Keir Starmer could clearly have amended the terms of the Rwanda scheme to allow people to return if they were granted asylum. But that's, by the by, he scrapped the scheme now, and we are looking at the first historic moment of EU migrants effectively that have come into the EU being transferred to a non-EU country. And this is something that the EU now, despite demonising the Italian Prime Minister Giorgio Meloni for much of her views on migration, they have said, the EU, they are actively looking at these offshore asylum hubs.
And so, OK, that's what the EU's doing. What about the UK? Is there anything in this for the UK or for the UK to learn?
Well, as I say, we had our own deterrent scheme under the Conservatives, which has now been scrapped. Interestingly, Sir Keir Starmer, when he visited Rome last month and met with Giorgio Meloni, had expressed some real interest in the scheme that they had adopted with Albania. So having spent many hundreds of millions of pounds to then scrap the Rwanda scheme, we may be headed down a similar road to the EU and looking at countries a little closer to home, like Albania. There's nothing easy in this particular issue in trying to deal with this crisis. And we're hearing as well today reports that the UK government is actively now looking for more hotel space because of the surge of migrants that have been coming across the channel in recent months. They had promised that they were going to end the use of hotels, hundreds of hotels right across the country. It now seems they're looking for more hotels to accommodate these asylum seekers.
OK, Mark, appreciate it. Thank you for the update. Thank you.
Now, time is ticking on your chance to win £36,000 as part of our Great British Giveaway. There's just 2 weeks left in this competition. Make sure you enter.
We love making our audience big cash winners, and you really could be next with £36,000 tax-free cash in your bank.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
The Daily Mail now, Josh, and pub landlords have to worry about more than the optics when it comes to offensive banter,
Yeah,
it
this
seems.
is a really big story and important. Pub landlords could have to become banter cops to stop themselves being sued by staff offended by comments from customers under workers' rights reform. So, Labour, when they were part of their election process, they were like, we're going to reform workers' rights, and that all sounds good on paper, but there were issues in terms of how might it affect employees and fear from employees costing them more money. One of these things that they're sort of pushing through, though, is that in the Equality Act of 2010, part of the issue was that if you were offended at work or someone said something sexist or racist, something that affected you, the employer had to take some sort of, like, they had three chances to kind of take action.
Yeah.
Now, the employer has to should have taken action already. So employees can sue employers. Now, this has a big impact on us because we're comics and we perform in venues. And if some of the bar staff hear a joke that they don't like, then they can sue their employer, potentially, under this legislation.
So it's not punters?
Well, also, it could be like you're at a bar and some bloke is like, oh, I like that top, or whatever. That's not good behaviour. But the point is now that employee could sue their employer.
So, because, I mean, the sort of scenario I was imagining was that a barmaid was being maybe sexually harassed or
That's
something.
what they're focusing in this article, but other articles have gone down the free speech route. Okay. And also venues and universities having lectures. We saw it at, in Edinburgh Fringe Festival and Sadowitz. He had a show cancelled not because of any punters, but because two of the 18-year-olds were working. They were upset by his
There was a
winning.
bar in Brighton, wasn't there? There was a story we covered a few weeks ago. A bar in Brighton threw some people out because...
exactly. They had turfs on the...
turfs. Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
kids taking time off school and parents being charged for it. Denise says, I go on holiday to avoid children during term time. If parents bring them on holiday outside of school holidays, they are a nuisance to others who want a quiet holiday.
Carol says, my daughter's coming out to visit me in New Zealand this Christmas for a special birthday. Why should she be fined to spend quality time with grandchildren, grandparents and some truly wonderful memories created? And we're fine for that. This is a once-off special holiday. Fair enough, Carol.
No, it's not fair enough.
Yeah,
For people stupid. You're not in charge. There's a Department of Education, there's school, local authorities and whatever. You are not in charge of that. They're in charge of you and your children. And when people don't get that, and we're looking at Wales today, 20% of teenagers illiterate.
Well, Patrick says, can the children read and write properly? If they can't, no holiday. And I have to say I agree with that. Anyway, we have to wrap that little segment because Andrew and Bev are waiting in the wings to talk to us this morning. Lovely to see you.
Morning. We're going to be doing that Wales story again.
Yeah,
also with the illiteracy. I just can't get my head around it.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
We're a developing country.
I mean,
one of the richest countries in the world.
You know, being from Northern Ireland, education's very highly regarded, whatever. I just cannot imagine that being allowed to exist.
Amazing.
We're going to work out.
And it's 20 years of a Labour government, and they are responsible for education in Wales.
Yes, yeah.
And it's on their watch.
Yes,
and it's a basic thing. If you're going to get certain things right, that's one of the things you have to get it. 1 in 5 children can't read or write.
Your life outcomes, if you at 11 cannot read or write, what hope have you got?
I know.
Yeah.
I bet they can find their way around a smartphone, though.
Yeah.
You also have to say, I don't want to criticise parents, but what about the parents here?
Maybe they can't read and write, but it does beg the question, maybe they can't read and write.
But this is my point. People believe they have this right. We will tell the schools what to do. We'll tell the TV stations what to do, who to hire, who to fire. Everybody's got power and authority and they think they can do what they want. You can't. The school's in charge, not you. That's my view. Not in a million years could I imagine my parents taking me out of school and taking a penalty for it. They couldn't have afforded the penalty, but, you know, just ridiculous.
It is a shocking statistic, isn't it? Absolutely shocking.
We're also going to be talking about, I'm sure you've done this as well this morning, about Italy shipping off migrants to Albania to be processed, which is, I think when we're talking
16 of them.
Mark White. Is that how many it is?
So there's 16.
It's a start.
There's going to be 36,000.
It's a start.
It's going to be a lot more.
You've got to start somewhere. And we're going to be talking to somebody who is in favour of the winter fuel cut for pensioners. I've not really heard that voice.
No.
Well, are they wealthy? I mean, presumably they're going to say they don't need it and therefore why should the government be giving them 300 quid when they can afford it perfectly well, and that's taxpayers' money?
The trouble is there are some pensioners who simply can't afford to lose this money.
Yeah.
And there are some who don't need it.
Yeah, there are.
But somehow they've managed to pitch it in completely the wrong place.
But they've used a sledgehammer to smash the nut, haven't they?
Guys, gotta love you and leave you, and we'll see you again at 9:30. And I'll see you next week. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For some, a real soaker today, but for parts of eastern England, it'll be mostly dry and really quite warm here. In fact, warm air has been wafting north for the past 24 hours, producing some heavy pulses of rain overnight. Met Office yellow warning in place. That heavy rain tracking into parts of Scotland through the day, and then further pulses of heavy rain for Wales and southwest England. Some drier interludes likely across Northern Ireland, and as I mentioned at the start, much of eastern England will stay dry. Parts of East Anglia and the southeast should see some sunshine, which will lift the temperatures up to 20, maybe 21 degrees. Even where it's raining, really quite mild, but it's quite humid, it's quite dank, it's quite misty and murky, and further pulses of rain likely to spread up from France and over the Channel through the evening and overnight. So again, pretty wet through this evening. The evening rush hour on the M4, the M5, not very clever. Parts of Northern Ireland, again, not wet all day. There'll be some drier spells here, but more showers also coming up from the south. Turning a bit dry this evening across parts of Scotland, but again, staying pretty grey, pretty murky. A lot of mist and low cloud on some of the higher routes, and further pulses of rain then come across northern England into southern Scotland during this evening. And then it starts to turn wetter too over eastern England overnight, so some heavy bursts of rain coming in here. Then turning a little drier and a little clearer for Wales and southwest England. Another very warm night with many places staying in double digits and a few likely to stay in the teens. So yes, still pretty warm on Thursday, turning a little fresher, drier day, certainly for Wales and southwest England, some good spells of sunshine. We'll steadily see the rain clearing away from East Anglia in the southeast, taking a little longer to clear from northeast Scotland. A few showers later for Wales and the southwest and Northern Ireland too, but many places looking fine and sunny tomorrow, and although not as warm and humid as today, still temperatures above average.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
On the M1 heading out of Belfast, the inside lane's blocked by an accident between junctions 1 and 2 from the west link to the A55 at Balmoral, causing queues. The M61 in Lancashire is closed southbound from junction 8 at Chorley to 6 at Horridge after an accident. The M20 in Kent is closed eastbound from junction 1 for the M25 to 3 for the M26 after an accident. There are long delays back along the A20 and clockwise M25 over the QE2 bridge. On the M2 in Kent, 3 out of 4 lanes are closed eastbound after an accident between junctions 2 and 3 near Rochester, with queues from junction 1 at Strood. On the M4 in Berkshire, there's a lane closed where a van's broken down on the westbound exit at junction 12, the A4 near Reading, causing delays. On the M5 near Bristol, there's a lane closed southbound where someone has a puncture at junction 17 for the Cribbs Causeway. And on the M4 in Carmarthenshire, the outside lane's blocked eastbound by a breakdown between junctions 48 and 47, causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Online dating apps are still the go-to for millions of British adults, with 1 in 10 using them to look for a romantic connection.
Yes, are you one of them? Let us know. But with many apps introducing subscription fees and complex algorithms, the world of online dating has never been harder to navigate. So who better to join us to discuss this than Mr. Tinder himself, Stefan Pierre Tomlin. You have been dubbed Britain's best-looking eligible bachelor.
Yeah, so this happened back in 2016. Got an email from Tinder, and it was like, "You're the most swiped man on Tinder."
So just explain to us, for viewers who don't know, what is swiping? What does that mean on Tinder?
Yeah, so on Tinder, the app, if you swipe left, that means you don't like the person in front of you.